Chapter 1 Rusted Bones. I lay on top of the shipping container humming a tune, just planning to take a good rest. Suddenly, inhuman roars erupted from below, and sensing trouble, I rolled over and leapt down. I looked down to find half an eyeball stuck to my soul, split into a cluster of tiny lenses, still twitching nervously, reflecting the warped sky above the harbor. Another glance revealed the crane's steel cable was unknowingly close to snapping, its end entangled with the mutated remains of a dockworker. The man's spine had pierced through his orange work uniform, sprouting centipede-like bone segments that now greedily sucked the dew condensation on the steel beam. From the direction of the container yard came the sloppy sound of chewing. When I focused my gaze, I saw two boys no older than 7 or 8 squatting behind an oil drum, dismembering a half-dead stray dog. "Quick, try this." One of the children giggled as he shoved a piece of dog meat into the other's mouth. Their tongues had split into petal-like mouthparts, and their throats bulged with glowing tumors when they swallowed. Consume, prove, exist. In the distance, a massive membrane of flesh materialized in the sky, then erupted with inhuman speech from its depths. Then came the human tsunami. Every citizen in the harbor convulsed simultaneously. The first to leap into the sea was that dockworker with the mutated spine. His bones exploded outward, ensnaring the 2 fleeing children and dragging them beneath the water. Next, the fisherman in the container yard also jumped down. His jaw transformed into hydraulic pliers as he clamped onto his wife and daughter, leaping into the fluorescent waves. I watched as the seawater began to boil, countless human bodies crashing against the remnants of the flesh membrane like an upstream rain of corpses. In just 5 minutes, this gargantuan beast stitched together from tens of thousands of human bodies stood up and began moving toward the city. Its feast was about to begin. Everything, absolutely everything, began on that night 2 weeks ago. As night fell, a biting cold wind swept through, and the dingy neon lights cast mottled shadows on the ground, resembling countless tired eyes. I had just arrived in this city, City Z, walking down unfamiliar streets, my mood as dim and heavy as the night itself. It had been 2 days since leaving Makabu to come here, and a friend had prepared a simple apartment for me to stay in, but an oblivious middleman ruthlessly deducted 9/10 of the rent as commission, making my search for a place to live incredibly difficult. At last, I tracked down the residential area where the house was located. In the downpour, a dull ache throbbed in my lower back, the old wound from a bullet 3 years ago coiled like a venomous snake beside my spine, gnawing at my marrow whenever the weather turned damp. I raised my bottle toward the holographic billboard at the alley's entrance. Neon light filtered through the amber liquid, casting the silhouette of a shattered raven onto my palm. Rainwater streaked across the holographic screen, distorting its colors, scattering the raven's projection into fragmented wings across the puddled ground, only to be trampled into flickering pixels. In that moment, I felt the entire city was submerged in an enormous petri dish, and I was nothing more than a specimen on a slide, laid bare for observation. "Please, I swear I didn't steal anything." The girl's whimpers were sliced apart by the rain. 5 hulking men, their necks smothered in tattoos, were kicking at a curled-up figure. Every time their batons missed and struck the pavement, the muffled thud sent a sharp pulse through my temples. I caught a whiff of that scent when the leader suddenly convulsed and dropped to his knees, hurriedly pulling a syringe from his waist pouch. The indigo liquid sloshing inside the tube shimmered with an eerie, oil-like sheen under the neon lights. "Brothers, this is Ant Factory Special." The man plunged the needle into his carotid artery, the blue liquid seeping into his skin like something alive, veins bulging into vine-like protrusions. "I feel strong enough to knock out a rhino right now. I've got new stuff here." Another thug gasped heavily, fumbling for his syringe, the needle glinting coldly under the streetlight. 3 seconds to heaven, 10 minutes to godhood. Then he let out a hyena-like howl, pupils contracting into vertical slits, his baseball bat swinging with afterimages trailing behind. Stirred by his example, the rest eagerly reached for their needles too. The sound of blows amplified through the rain curtain, and the old scar on my lower back suddenly burned with pain again. The first thug who had injected himself suddenly froze, blue-tinged froth spraying from his nostrils. His muscles swelled like overinflated rubber, knuckles cracking audibly, yet his leg still rose mechanically to kick at the girl's head, drool spilling from his mouth. This was no human posture, it was the jerky movement of a puppet controlled by drugs. The girl suddenly clamped her teeth on the assailant's wrist. As his grip loosened in pain, she slipped through his legs like a loach, her shoes pushing off the wall before she dove toward the broken drainage pipe. "Damn, that brat must be part gecko." Bang! I shattered the beer bottle against the back of the leader's skull, glass shards mingling with blood droplets suspended in the rain. I stood with my hands hanging limp, the downpour cascading over my brow, still clutching the blood-dripping neck of the broken bottle. His Adam's apple twitched beneath his soaked and blood-stained collar, as if swallowing down some searing anticipation. When the second man lunged, his throat convulsed violently, his drug-injected pupils dilated to the point of swallowing the whites of his eyes. Pivoting backward, I yanked a squealing fire escape railing free, the wrenching force sending blue sparks flying from the bolts. The rust-eaten metal whimpered like a dying creature when it struck my opponent's body. The third man's kneecap shattered as I took 2 steel pipe blows to my ribs. The first strike interrupted my victorious gasp, the second forced an unvoiced grunt back into my abdomen. Pain didn't explode instantly, first came icy numbness, then the burning sensation of displaced organs, before the dull ache finally surged through my temples like rising tide. I tasted metallic saltiness welling up in my throat. When I turned, the fourth man's breath hitched in the shadows, his pipe-wielding hand was trembling. Watching the assailants flee in panic, I clutched my chest and slowly sat down. "Take the money if you want it." I tossed the rain-soaked wallet to the girl, its hidden compartment containing half a charred photograph, but the child kept staring at my blood-stained shirt hem, where a tactical belt studded with miniature weapons was wrapped around me. I clamped down on her wrist bone. "This could kill you." I pried open the girl's palm. "Big brother, thank you for saving me. My name is..." The girl was about to speak when I interrupted her. "You run pretty fast." He, I thought you couldn't win." The girl rubbed her head with a sheepish laugh, repeating, "Big brother, my name is Anan." Then the child led me to a dilapidated house. This was her home, just 2 apartment buildings away from where I lived. The girl pushed open the door, and a pungent odor filled the room. A young woman lay unconscious on the sofa, with signs of drug use nearby. The girl tiptoed in, picked up the blanket, and draped it over the woman. I sighed, pulled a few bills from my wallet, placed them on the grimy table, then turned and left. As the door hinges groaned shut, the alley was so quiet you could hear the rain tapping out a mournful elegy on the sheet metal. My lower back pressed against the damp brick wall, the metal buckle of my tactical belt digging into the scar of an old gunshot wound, the pain like sharp thumbtacks boring inch by inch into my marrow. "Damn it all," I gasped, reaching into my pocket for painkillers but pulling out half a pack of rain-sodden cigarettes instead. The cold light carved barred shadows across my face, the lighter's flame always snuffed by the wind before it could touch the cigarette. 1, 2, 3 failed attempts, and suddenly I realized I might be crying, the curve of my lips eerily similar to Anan's mother's twitching face when she'd lost consciousness. This realization brought a bitter taste rising in my throat, as if I'd swallowed the entire alley's stagnant, rotting water. I eventually gave up on that soaked cigarette, gently placing the pack on the milk crate by the apartment building's entrance. I don't know what the future holds, only that right now, I'm utterly exhausted and utterly alone. The night market stalls in the distance were still open as I stumbled in, drinking one cup after another until slowly, I could feel nothing at all. Who knows how much time had passed when a sliver of consciousness returned. Startled, I found myself standing at my own doorstep, inserting and twisting the key in the lock. Feeling the drunken haze rise again, I groped my way forward and collapsed onto the mattress reeking of mildew. As my eyelids slowly closed, I surrendered to endless darkness, idly thinking I should definitely shave when morning comes. Chapter 2 The Stove. And Shinshua wiped the condensation off the menu for the 3rd time. In the reflection on the glass, my drenched figure was curled up on a plastic stool, like a dying mackerel washed ashore by the waves. The dim yellow light seeping from the kitchen fell between my trembling knuckles. Stir-fried rice noodles with pork offal soup, I murmured to the peeling table, my voice like sandpaper scraping against a rusted pipe. And Shinshua noticed I was referring to the old dishes from 10 years ago, before the demolition of the old street, back when the handwritten bamboo menu under the sign of Old Gun Eatery was still hanging under my father's hand. Amid the humming of the induction stove, the sound of metal scraping mixed in. And Shinshua lifted the blue cloth curtain to the kitchen and found that the iron pot, freshly patched that afternoon, had developed another crack. This pot was left by her father. Recently it's been cracking inexplicably. This morning as she scrubbed the stubborn blackened stains at the bottom with a steel wool pad, those carbonized patterns suddenly twisted into wailing human faces, then instantly returned to normal. "Your soup." She slammed the clay pot in front of me, where wolfberries floated in the murky broth like scabs of blood. The old scar on the back of my neck took on an eerie indigo hue in the steam, as if someone had smeared oil paint over a festering wound. I began pouring ergwotu into the soup, the cheap alcohol mingling with angelica fragrance steaming into the rainy night. I am Hai Feng. The other day, I was drinking and eating at a street-side stall. When I first entered, the ant factory advertisement playing on the radio by the cashier suddenly turned into fragmented whale songs, the electric static buzzing piercingly loud. I stacked the empty Jiujiang Shuangjing liquor bottles upside down like a pagoda, with dark red liquid seeping from the mouth of the bottommost one. When the proprietress in Shinshue went to fetch more alcohol, she seemed to notice something unusual about the sea fish in the freezer, but upon looking again, the fish had returned to their rigid state. At 2 in the morning, the rain curtain swallowed the last diner. I slumped over the greasy table, a coin rolling from my palm into the corner. Muttering something in my drunken stupor, I probably reminded in Shinshue of that calico cat that stole leftovers last week. The cat had a tuft of white fur on its forehead and would hide in the power distribution box in the back alley when chased by children. Now, bloody paw prints still marked the box's door, pointing toward the abandoned church. My chopstick grip was odd, picking at rice noodles as if disassembling a miniature bomb. Suddenly, fine cracks appeared on the clay pot simmering beef offal on the stove, the sound identical to that of Nshinshua's father's fishing boat compass shattering on his deathbed. As I picked up the last piece of pig liver, the ceiling fan's shadow swept across my Adam's apple. And Shinshua refilled my soup for free, and the tactical watch slipping from my cuff flashed blue light. She caught a whiff of briny seawater mixed with the pungent scent of rust emanating from me. When I tilted my head back to drink the soup, the kitchen fluorescent light flickered. She thought she saw glowing organisms wriggling in the rainwater pooled at my feet, but upon looking again, there was nothing but ordinary puddles. I yelled for another plate of peanuts and accidentally knocked over a dish at the corner of the table. As Shinshua picked up the fragments, she noticed frost patterns crystallized on the broken porcelain, yet this was a sweltering rainy season midnight. The next evening, the street-side diner had no customers, and Shinshua sat blankly staring at the cash register. Silvery strands of hair escaped her chef's hat, and the neckline of her apron revealed a dark red birthmark resembling a stranded anchor. The calluses on her right hand, the one perpetually gripping a wok spatula, were oddly thinner than those typical of regular chefs. I lifted the plastic door curtain and went in again, asking her to make me stir-fried rice noodles with pork offal soup, lightly spicy with extra cilantro. She went to the kitchen to chop ginger, saying the ingredients I wanted were gone and suggesting eel rice instead, also reminding me that drinking hard liquor at 3 a.m. damages the liver. I poked at the eel with my chopsticks, teasing her that her knife skills looked like they were learned from a bomb squad. Just then, there was a muffled noise from the freezer in the back kitchen. When she opened it, she found the frozen squid had mutated. She tossed sea salt over it, and the mutation disappeared, leaving only ice shavings glowing blue. I called for another half-pound of soju, but she snatched the bottle away, brushing my fingertips. The ceiling fan stopped, and the menus rustled. I asked her if she cared about customers' lives at all, and she replied that she just didn't want anyone vomiting on the stove after closing time. She wiped the oily stains on the table with a cloth, and something wriggled beneath it. When we lifted the cloth, only moldy peanuts were rolling around. On the third night, I knew Shinshua was waiting for me, and I had a feeling I'd go again. I jolted awake to the crisp clatter of an old shell casing hitting the floor, the metallic impact merging with remembered gunfire until my eardrums throbbed. Yellowed curtains let in splinters of light that traced Makabu's coordinates on the wall, the numbers edged like dried bloodstains, coordinates seared into my retinas that left a charred aftertaste even when I closed my eyes. The glass painkiller bottle on the nightstand reflected mildew stains on the ceiling, its surface worn smooth from habitual handling. A leftover ritual from some past mission. Pain reminds me I'm still breathing. I kicked aside liquor bottles as whiskey rot and shell casing rust churned in my sinuses. Half a child's drawing curled at the edges from sweat inside my tactical belt, where a lopsided house floated beneath 3 indigo stars, the corners on signature bleeding into water stains. Last night I saw little Anan, the girl who stole bread, being pinned by a fishmonger beside a filthy gutter. The bread in her arms was oozing green mold, and I noticed a medical bill tucked in the torn part of her sneakers with Lin Shoyun written on it, so I tossed out some cash to settle things for her. Recognizing her predicament, I offered to pay her to show me an out-of-towner around. In the morning, Anan led me through a corroded drainage pipe, calling it the Meteor Tunnel, its inner walls transformed into a starry sky by glowing moss. Tracing the tidal patterns on the pipe walls, I realized they were seismic cracks from the Mech War era, still bearing children's crayon drawings and remnants of military fiber optic cables, their broken strands coated with familiar indigo blue ice crystals. Anan pointed to the tunnel graffiti, calling it a secret gallery. In one abstract mural, I spotted divine warning sigils. She pried open a loose brick and pulled out glass marbles for me to choose. I picked the indigo one, feeling a faint vibration against my fingertips, and slipped it into the concealed compartment of my tactical belt. At night, Anan wrapped neon light strips around the merry-go-round on the rooftop of the abandoned shopping mall and pressed the stolen switch to start it. Behind the control box, I found half of a yellowed amusement park map marked locations coinciding with the safe house coordinates of the Night Owls organization. When the merry-go-round started, the surveillance cameras from the opposite building all turned toward us, their lenses crawling with purple fungal tendrils. A tire swing hung from the steel cables of a construction site crane. Under the moonlight, Anan swung high into the air, saying she'd bring her mom here once she recovered. As she let go mid-swing, her satchel flew out, and I caught it mid-air. Inside were half a box of deep blue vials bearing barcodes from the ant factory. She called them rainbow candy for her mom. By the riverbank, Anan stood on her tiptoes to place a shell necklace around my neck. I caught a whiff of gutter oil and the sickly sweet tang of medicine in her hair. When I stepped back, my tactical belt hit the iron railing, the metallic click sounded like a bullet being chambered. Her hand froze mid-air, the shell necklace swaying in the rain. My temple throbbed. I'd heard these words 3 years ago. Back then, it was, people who trust each other should exchange tokens. My fingers brushed against my empty painkiller case, then touched the child's drawing stuck inside my tactical belt, 3 indigo stars bleeding through the paper. On the way home, Anan said, "Big brother, your hands are so cold." She tried to hold my hand but was scratched by the metal buckle of my tactical belt. I turned the belt to the other side and said coldly, "Don't touch." My voice was as icy as a rusted bayonet. "Why?" Anan asked with a tremble in her voice. Lele said hugs help wounds heal faster. "She lied to you," I cut her off. The old wound between my ribs suddenly twinged. I knew the price of that lie all too well. Who the hell is Lei? I thought. Passing the abandoned amusement park, the carousel suddenly started spinning, playing an out-of-tune birthday song. Anan pointed excitedly, "Look, it's welcoming us." I was staring at the blinking infrared probe behind the control box, the lenses swiveling to the rhythm of the music like crosshairs in a scope. My subconscious hand wandered toward the stun gun at my waist until I noticed Anan gripping the cobalt blue vial with the same tension. "Tomorrow, can I still come see you?" Suddenly, Anan turned and wrapped her arms around my waist. My muscles tensed violently, the metal buckle of my tactical belt biting into my palm. "Let go," my voice grated like sandpaper. "No," Anan clung tighter. "After Mom got sick, no one's hugged me." My hand froze mid-air, fingertips hovering an inch from the girl's trembling shoulders. The scene burned too familiar: torrential rain, an embrace, then gunfire. I shoved Anan away violently, my combat boot crushing glass marbles underfoot. "Go home." As I turned, raindrops fractured the moonlight into countless shattered selves. Every reflection in the puddles echoed those blurred final words: "You'll never deserve love." Chapter 4. Neon lights buzzed and fizzed in the damp air, casting the signboard of "Old Gun, Food Stall" in a sickly magenta hue. Late at night, I pushed through the plastic curtain once more, the wind chime beneath the eaves abruptly stilled before emitting a grating rustle, an ill omen that made me frown. Reaching into the fridge, I grabbed a bottle of Nulantian liquor and began drinking alone. And Shinshue was chopping bones in the back kitchen, each thud of the cleaver sending tremors through her heart. Glancing at the surveillance monitors, she saw 4 red dots converging from different directions, moving far too fast for ordinary customers. "Landlady, another 3 tails of Huangjiu." I slurred from my slumped position in the corner, subtly adjusting the metal clasps on my tactical belt into defensive formation. In my peripheral vision, 3 men in reflective vests dismounted their motorcycles. Their delivery driver badges emitted an unnatural blue glow, the unmistakable insignia of Ant Factory's Tier 3 field operatives. "Boss lady, it's time to upgrade the fire safety system." The blonde-haired youth flicked away his beetle nut residue, its bloody red juice splattering across the table in a scorpion-shaped pattern. His accomplice lifted the lid of an insulated box, revealing a modified sonic emitter, blue mucus oozing from the Ant Factory logo on its casing. "Listen, just install this, and we'll all pretend nothing happened." And Shinshue gripped the spatula tightly, her knuckles whitening from the force. "That can't be right. Didn't the fire department just inspect last month? That's the old standard." The blonde dude's cybernetic eye suddenly projected a hologram, a map of City Z with crimson X's marked over most of the eateries. "The fire department has already approved it. What we at Ant Factory provide is the ultimate fireproof solution." I took a sip of rice wine and noticed the ice ball at the bottom of the glass was boiling. This wasn't a hallucination. The ice trapped in the alcohol was resonating with the intruder's sonic emitter, and I silently cursed, knowing things were about to go south. My hand reached for the short flat stick at my waist as I saw Shinshua's cleaver tilting slightly. Reflected on the blade's surface, the electronic Venus network on the thug's neck shimmered with an indigo glow. "If you won't cooperate." The blonde suddenly smashed a liquor bottle, scattering glass shards across the floor with a piercing screech. "Then my boys will have to give you a live demonstration of our fireproofing." The first thug lunged at the proprietress's instant. I assembled the short rods behind my back into a long staff. Like a silver snake darting from its hole, the tip of my staff struck his Tsuchi acupoint. The moment his sonic emitter slipped from his grip, I turned and caught the device. "Not eating properly? Looking to die?" With a hiss, the blonde punk's mantis blades extended from his forearms, trailing a foul wind as the blue crystals embedded in the blades emitted psionic interference waves. My staff traced mysterious arcs through the air, its specially engraved patterns shredding illusions as I effortlessly flipped the mantis blades upward. The blades embedded themselves in the ceiling fan, sending its spinning blades crashing down onto an insulated box branded with an ant logo, scattering blue crystalline powder across the room. "Watch your breath." And Shinshu suddenly tossed a salt canister. I mid-air kicked the container to burst it open, and as sodium ions met the crystalline powder, indigo sparks erupted in brilliant flashes. The thugs screeched while clawing at their throats, their cybernetic Venus networks going haywire inside their augmented bodies. "You punk, you've pissed me off." The blonde delinquent tore open his shirt to reveal his mechanical thoracic cavity, where blue crystal clusters at the energy core had already grown into a spider-like formation. Crack! His mechanical chest cavity split apart violently. The blue crystal clusters at the energy core proliferated wildly as 8 metallic limbs pierced through his skin. The spider-like abdomen was densely covered with crystalline protrusions shaped like human faces, those visages twisted in silent agony before suddenly opening their mouths to spray indigo energy threads. "You're really fucking ugly," I teased, then leaned back to dodge a beam that grazed past my face. The energy threads brushed against the ceiling's aged light tubes, instantly freezing the warm yellow glow into icicles that shattered on the floor. "Let me show you something." The robotic spider's compound eyes flashed with the Ant Factory logo as its segmented limbs scraped across the ground, trailing ghostly blue sparks. I vaulted into the air using my staff for leverage and thrust its tip toward the cluster of human-like faces at Spider's abdomen core. The crystalline faces suddenly merged into a shield. The metallic clash reverberated through my arms, numbing my tiger's mouth, the fleshy area between thumb and index finger. A spider leg swept horizontally. I leaped onto a ceiling fan and kicked off, sending the rotating blade slicing into the limb. Viscous blue hemolymph oozed from the jagged wound. Behind you, and Shinshua's warning was shredded by the whistling silk strands. I twisted midair as 3 energized threads grazed my tactical belt and embedded into the wall, slicing Old Gun's neon sign into falling shards. I leveraged the momentum of my fall to swing out the long staff, its engraved pattern suddenly glowing with a silver light that sliced through the cluster of crystals on the spider's head like a scalpel. The mechanical spider emitted a high-pitched screech as black mist oozed from the punctured crystal. Watching the black mist, my tactical goggles flashed a red warning light. My pupils contracted abruptly, slowing my reaction just enough for the spider's legs to seize my right arm. As crystal spikes penetrated my flesh, an icy coldness spread through my veins like creeping glaciers. My tactical belt automatically discharged an electric shock pad. 900 volts surged backward through the spider's leg. Smoke curled from its joints as I wrenched my staff free, pulling out a spray of blue crystal shards. One fragment grazed in Shinshua's cleaver, instantly casting the blade with the glow of moonlit rain. Time to end this. I wiped blood from the corner of my mouth. With a sudden disintegration and reassembly, the staff transformed into 12 silver segments that shot out like meteors, piercing every articulation of the spider's limbs. The mechanical spider struggled to spit out its final strand of energy silk, only for me to divert it toward the sonic emitter left behind by the blonde. The moment the two forces collided, all the frozen fish exploded simultaneously, scattering undigested small fish and shrimp into the air like a fleeting aurora under the neon lights. The spider legs twitched violently before gradually melting into molten metal. I turned my gaze to the remaining thugs. Get lost. Don't let me see you again. I thought this was the perfect moment to drop a cool one-liner, but as they scrambled into their car, trembling, they actually managed to retort, "We won't forget your face. Just you wait." And Shinshua clutched a blood-stained rag, her fingertips still trembling faintly. Amid the toppled tables and chairs, fragments of blue crystals lay scattered, emitting a faint, eerie hum. She looked up at me as I was cleaning its silver baton with movements so gentle it was like caressing a lover's hair. "Your hand." She noticed the torn flesh between my thumb and index finger, blood trickling down the length of the weapon. "It's nothing." I ripped off a bandage for a makeshift wrap, the metal buckles on my tactical belt gleaming coldly under the lights. "Used to it. Just a scratch." From the kitchen came the muffled explosion of frozen fish bursting open, and Shinshue instinctively hunched her shoulders, feeling her collarbones grow feverish as if something was trying to break through her skin. My gaze swept across her neck, pupils contracting slightly. "What was that?" "Want something to drink?" She broke the silence. "My treat." "No need." I reached for the empty flask. "I should get going." "Wait." And Shinshue took out a bottle of homemade plum wine from the freezer. "Take this with you. Drink some in moderation, it can help with the pain." As I took the flask, our fingertips briefly touched, and Shinshue felt a jolt run down her spine, and the kitchen lights flickered unsteadily. "You used to." She hesitated before asking, "What did you do before?" "Fixer." I tipped my head back and took a swig. "Specialized in repairing disobedient machines." "Including humanoid machines?" "Especially humanoid ones." As I stood up, the metal buckles on my tactical belt clinked crisply. Walking to the door, I paused and threw something to Shinshue from my pocket, a metal box. "Hang it on your wind chime," I said. "It'll give you warning." While cleaning up, Shinshue noticed a dent in the chair I'd been sitting on. As she reached out to touch the indentation, her pupils suddenly shone with an unnatural silver light, and strands of her hair stirred without any wind. The frozen fish in the kitchen all rolled their deathly pale eyes simultaneously, their gill covers flapping violently. Gripping the cleaver tightly, she noticed her own reflection in the blade, her lips curled into an eerie smile. Frantic, she lowered her head, only to see the rib pattern on the chopping board twisting into spiral formations identical to those on seashells. She whispered softly, "Who exactly are you?" I wasn't there, but I could imagine her heart pounding fiercely, yet what surged within her wasn't fear, but something deeper, something resonant. The moonlight outside the window grew abruptly blinding. She watched as her shadow stretched long across the wall, becoming alien and menacing. Chapter 5 Morning light cooking, 5 a.m. at Old Gun Street stall kitchen. And Shinshue stood before the mirror, twisting her silver-gray hair into a bun that concealed her pointed ears. She changed into the chef's uniform left by her father, its elbows neatly patched. Staring into the mirror, she whispered, "I must win today." Practicing a smile, her heart swelled with unease and anticipation. The dough on the cutting board fermented quietly, emitting faint gurgling sounds as it expanded. Then she reached out to touch the mirror, its icy surface awakened a memory. Her 10th birthday, standing by the stove as her father guided her hand to slice fish, the blade trembling with a soft hum as it met the bones. She shook her head, dispelling the gloom, then patted her cheeks and said, "Time to go." Behind the door awaited the rising sun, its morning light stretching her shadow long and slender like an unsheathed kitchen knife. The competition entrance teemed with crowds. Many of Z City's renowned chefs had come to prove their skills that day. The moment they appeared, fans and reporters swarmed around them. The first to appear is Chef Shi from the International Hotel, whose Western cuisine reigns unrivaled for miles around. His golden dyed hair often makes people mistake him for a foreigner. Next is Chef Luo from the South, whose pungent culinary creations have earned him a devoted following. His years of perfecting stinky river snail noodles make even sewer water smell like a rose garden when he cooks. Third is Master Chef Lu from 100 Greens Garden, known for crafting dishes so visually arresting they bewitch the senses. His most famous creation makes duck necks resemble bamboo rat heads. Then come the heavyweight contenders, the robotic-armed chef who calls himself Astro Boy, with multifunctional cooking equipment grafted to his limbs, an induction cooker for a left hand and a juicer for his right. His signature tech sushi delivers 4 flavors simultaneously, though he once overheated his induction hand and singed a judge's wig, now competing with a fire extinguisher in tow. A genetically modified chef whose sweat glands secrete spices, her tears make premium soy sauce, her saliva top-grade vinegar. She enjoys self-sufficient hot pot but once overseasoned judges into dehydration from nervousness. Old Bachelor Do King represents the traditionalists, wielding a rolling pin allegedly used by Emperor Qin Shi Huang. His immortality noodles promise longevity, though he's only 60. But he once mistakenly cooked incense sticks as noodles during pre-contest rituals. Then there's Molecular Gastronomy's VR Prince, wearing virtual reality goggles and wielding laser pointers. His signature virtual steak looks like beef but tastes like tofu, though when his headset died last competition, he mistook a judge's necktie for steak and tried to sear it. A nobody chef like Anshin Snow walked right in without any fuss. Resting her chin in her hands, she watched the famous chefs thinking, how nice it must be to have so many people adore you, their cooking must be truly exceptional. Just then, the loudspeaker called out number 0912, causing her to stumble slightly. In her flustered search for her badge, she caught sight of me in the spectator seats, holding a cardboard box brimming with vegetables, like someone who had just returned from grocery shopping. I gave a slight nod, pulled out a red apple from the box, and tossed it to her. Instinctively catching it, she noticed a smiley face carved into the apple. I pointed at my eyes, then my heart, and vanished into the crowd. A comforting warmth spread through her, and the faintest smile appeared on her face. Today she planned to prepare the long-intended Jiangsu cuisine specialty, squirrel-shaped mandarin fish. At the fish stall, she meticulously selected her ingredients, pressing the fish bodies to test their elasticity with her hands, eventually choosing a lively, fresh mandarin fish. She also picked fresh ingredients like ginger, scallions, cooking wine, sugar, vinegar, and tomato paste. Back at the counter, she began her preparations. First, she scaled and gutted the mandarin fish, rinsed it clean, and placed it on the cutting board. Then, wielding a sharp kitchen knife with swift precision, she skillfully carved the fish meat. Starting from the back of the fish, she made connected slices, each cut exact and flawless, ensuring the fish would fully spread open when fried, forming the distinctive squirrel shape. The sliced mandarin fish was placed in a bowl, marinated with ginger slices, scallion sections, cooking wine, and an appropriate amount of salt. Afterwards, she evenly coated the fish with a thin layer of starch. She heated the oil in the wok and carefully slid the fish fillets in when the temperature reached 60% heat. The fish quickly puffed up in the hot oil, turning a golden brown, and she occasionally turned them with chopsticks to ensure even frying on all sides. The crispy fried mandarin fish was scooped out and placed on paper towels to drain the excess oil. Meanwhile, she began preparing the sweet and sour sauce. As the oil sizzled in the wok, gasps could be heard from the audience seats. The molecular cuisine prince was watching his holographic steak tap dancing on the judges' plates. The syrup bubbled and gurgled in the copper pot. She lifted a spoonful to the light, the amber liquid stretching into spider silk strands, a result of the extra half-coin weight of plum vinegar added to her adoptive father's secret recipe. As the sauce slowly simmered in the pot, she stirred continuously with a spoon, ensuring the perfect balance of sugar and vinegar. Adding the fried fish back into the wok, she tossed it quickly to coat each piece evenly with the glossy sweet and sour glaze. Finally, she placed the mandarin fish on a plate, drizzled it with the remaining sweet and sour sauce, and garnished it with chopped scallions. The time had come. A perfectly executed sweet and sour squirrel mandarin fish was ready. She served the dish onto the dining table and invited the judges to taste. The fish meat was crispy on the outside yet tender inside, with a balanced sweet and sour flavor, exuding a rich aroma. As the silver-haired lead judge's chopstick tips touched the fish gills, the crisp crunch amplified through the microphone resonated across the venue. The old man's clouded pupils welled up like tides as he murmured, "Oh mother, this caramelized fragrance, just like the salted duck eggs my mother cured with seaweed ash, the jar buried 30 years under the locust tree in the backyard." His lapel was stained with sweet and sour sauce while his silver beard trembled with choke sobs, swaying like reeds in the wind. Just as Inshinshua broke into a smile, the electronic screen suddenly went black with a click, and a mechanical voice announced, "Contestant 0912 is disqualified for not using designated smart kitchenware." She left the stage dejectedly, holding her lunchbox, overhearing Wang Laowu arguing with the judges, "Cooking is all about heart. These damn rules of yours." Before he could finish, security robots carted him away. And Xinxue sat on a bench at the corner of the square, the lunchbox resting on her lap. Morning light filtered through the leaves, dappling her figure, while her seashell hair clip scattered tiny glints of reflected light. Dazed and despondent, she nibbled on the red apple I'd given her, the sweet tart juice mingling with salty tears as she muttered, "Why, the judges all said it was delicious." Her fingers absently traced the carved boat pattern on the lunchbox. At that moment, I walked over carrying a cardboard box filled with vegetables. I handed her a cup of hot cocoa and said, "Here, just bought it across the street, added 2 servings of marshmallows." She cradled the hot cocoa, her voice muffled as she asked, "Am I really that terrible?" I sat down beside her, placing the box at my feet, and said, "Crybaby, terrible people couldn't make squirrel-shaped mandarin fish that moved the judges to tears." I fished a tomato out of the box and toyed with it, adding, "Those judges clearly took bribes." She laughed through her tears and asked, "You saw?" I nodded and said, "Been watching since you started filleting the fish." I mimicked her movements, knife skills sharp and smooth. Whoosh! Oil temperature controlled perfectly, the sweet and sour sauce's aroma drifting halfway across the plaza. She lowered her head, stirring her hot cocoa, and said, "But I still lost." I pulled a green pepper from the cardboard box and replied, "Losing to a machine isn't the same as losing to culinary skills. I'll come find you tonight and teach you how to use those smart kitchen gadgets." Her eyes lit up as she asked, "Really?" I stood up, placing the green pepper back in the box, and said, 8 o'clock. Bring some ingredients. Before turning away, I paused and added, "Remember to bring an apron for me. I don't want flour getting everywhere." As she watched me walk away, she noticed a note tucked beneath the box that read, "Failure is the mother of success, but your success's older sister. Hai Feng." She carefully folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. In the morning light, the fountain in the square suddenly lit up, its spray refracting the colors of a rainbow. Chapter 6 Broken Blade. I jolted awake with the aftertaste of cheap alcohol, the tactical belt at my waist lying there like a centipede. On the nightstand sat a half-eaten, moldy croissant, thrust upon me as breakfast 3 days ago by Anan. After getting up, I shaved in front of the cracked mirror. Just as the razor touched my chin, it suddenly veered, drawing a bloody line above my Adam's apple. I took it as my body's instinctive warning, that girl had gotten too close. Keep your distance. After buying my daily necessities in the morning, I bumped into Xinxue while wandering around. Seeing her looking so sad, I couldn't help but recall some troubling matters of my own. There was still plenty of time before noon, and a faint chilly air lingered around. I walked alone down the crowded streets, where the blaring of car horns and the chatter of people blended into a cacophony. The sun hung high in the sky, slightly blinding. Truth be told, I was somewhat hoping to run into the little girl from before, but I felt a little awkward about going straight to her. Eventually, though, I found myself standing in front of the abandoned merry-go-round in the old amusement park. The morning mist carried a rusty scent as it seeped into my nostrils. Counting the bullet holes on the railings, I reached the 7th bar when a faint tremor traveled through my fingertips. The rusty surface flaked away to reveal engraved marks, and XXXX.XX.XX. The date was last Wednesday, precisely the day I first met Anan. "She's just a child," I murmured into the mist. "Don't drag her into trouble." At the bottom of the slide lay scattered colored chalks, forming a crooked smiling sun. As I crouched to examine them, the metal buckle of my tactical belt suddenly grew hot. My homemade bioelectric field detector was sounding the alarm. Mixed among the chalk dust were glowing blue particles, identical to the crystalline powder from the ant factory. What's going on? I walked to the secret base by the drainage pipe and found the fluorescent moss had already spread like a carpet. In the distance, Anan's orange hair clip was wedged in a crack on the pipe wall, with half a blood-stained fingernail stuck beside it. A sudden realization sent chills down my spine, my knuckles whitening. Anan's rusty iron door was slightly ajar, and the pungent scent of deep blue reagent filled my nostrils. My tactical belt suddenly vibrated at high frequency, the alarm signaling imminent danger. I drew my baton with a reverse grip, inching forward step by step. The sound of tearing fabric came from inside. "My mom needs medicine." Before Anan's whimper could finish, it was abruptly cut off by the hydraulic whir of a mechanical prosthesis. The moment I kicked the door open, I saw 3 augmented humans stuffing the girl into a metal restraint case. Anan's wrist cuff flashed with the scorpion emblem of Ant Factory. Nearby, a woman lay unconscious on the floor. My heart pounded violently, rage building within, blood burning in my veins as my body moved several times faster. "Put her down." I swung my baton like a thunderbolt, shattering the first enemy's titanium alloy knee with a single strike. Seizing the momentum, I twisted the hidden mechanism in the handle. 2 segmented spear shafts shot out from concealed compartments, the crisp metallic click of their joining echoing as the 2-meter-long combat spear tore through the air, its tip shattering the second foe's mechanical eye. Shoot! Shoot now! More footsteps pounded outside as ant factory enforcers burst in spraying bullets. I kicked over a nearby table and crouched behind it for cover. By the time the fifth magazine clattered empty, I seized my chance to charge. A smoke grenade launched from my tactical belt as my spear became a whirling blur of steel. The moment the last enemy fell, I heard the high-frequency hum of nanoblades vibrating. On the roof of the approaching modified truck, a tactical cloak fluttered violently in the data storm ant factory-crafted optical camouflage, its surface rippling with real-time surveillance feeds to assist in combat analysis. 3 million credits worth of prey, echoed a voice, digitally filtered. You should feel honored to cross paths with me. The assassin known as Shadowshade leaped down, and in that instant, 10 floating drones unfolded their laser arrays. I swung my spear in a wide arc, smashing 2 of the drones, but the spilled plasma congealed into an electrified spiderweb. Your gear's obsolete, Shadowshade taunted. His wrist guard fired carbon fiber grappling hooks, embedding them in the ceiling. Swinging like a pendulum through the gaps in the web, the nanoserrated edge of his tachi tore through the air, stirring a data maelstrom that projected countless ant factories' scorpion logos across the walls. I rolled sideways to evade the lethal slash as my tactical belt ejected an electromagnetic pulse grenade. But Shadowshade's visor had already predicted the trajectory. He raised his hand, guiding the blade's tip to pierce the grenade's casing with precision. Old injury to the left rib, heart rate 122. Diagnostic data flashed across Ing Yin's visor as he raised his blade to strike the energy core on my tactical belt. I pivoted swiftly, executing a whirling tail technique. My combat spear suddenly split and reconfigured into a 3-section staff. The chain links coiled around his katana, emitting the metallic screech of fatigue. The shadowy mechanical wrist suddenly pressurized, its blade vibrating at a deafening 30,000 Hz death frequency. The residential building's walls split apart like butter under its edge. As I backstepped, a concealed trap snapped upward from my landing spot. This bastard had laid smart mines before the fight even began. The electromagnetic shackle clamped onto my right ankle as the blade of Shadow's dusk pressed against my Adam's apple. The human reaction limit is 0.2 seconds. The glowing execution countdown flickered along the blade's edge. You've got 0.19 seconds left to repent. The screech of tearing metal pierced my eardrums. Gritting my teeth, I wrenched the locked ankle shackle apart with brute force, spraying blood across Ingen's darkened visor. Those 0.06 seconds of visual interference would prove fatal. The triple-section staff reassembled into a double-headed spear, its meteorite iron tip piercing through Ingen's shoulder power tank as purple coolant gushed out like arterial blood. For the first time, Ingen retreated. Cracks split open his mechanical helmet, revealing the youthful face beneath, no older than 25. Pain coefficient at level 7.8, he said with a grin. You'll make a decent appetizer. The ceiling suddenly collapsed as 6 heavy transport drones lowered their cables. Restrained within one drone's tempered glass capsule, Anan struggled frantically with neural electrodes plastered across her forehead. Multiple choice, Ingen flicked blood droplets from his blade. Chase me, or save her. My spear tip trembled while the tactical belt's life support system issued blood loss warnings. Ingen had already retreated to the shadow's edge. This man's withdrawal path was meticulously calculated, each step perfectly placed in surveillance blind spots, every footprint triggering pre-planted nerve gas mines. Gasping for breath, I shattered the last drone, only to find an empty restraint pod. The holographic screen inside displayed Ingen's live footage, currently forced to watching Ingen's combat recordings in some laboratory, her tears being collected through tubes into containers labeled sacrament. Don't even think about leaving. My tactical boots crushed broken glass as a peculiar scent of Sichuan peppercorns mixed with machine oil drifted from the alley entrance. Anan's scent marker. 3 hours earlier, she had secretly sprinkled homemade tracking spice on the ant factory enforcers. This faint fragrance led me through the abandoned food court, skirting past the man-eating vending machines Anan had once warned me about. I vaulted up the rusted fire escape, each landing precisely hitting the load-bearing beams Anan had doodled on. Those crooked star patterns now served as perfect footholds. Between the retractable hooks of my collapsible baton, I ghosted through the three-dimensional maze, leaving the drone swarm from the ant factory stranded in the sonic disruption zone. Crack! A blue stone bullet shattered on the tiles beside my foot, its fractures forming the con-trigram position in the 8 diagrams. My pupils constricted violently. I had only ever known one person who could wield such stone-throwing techniques. Now, there were 2. Just as my tactical boot touched the iron ladder of the cold storage unit, a bronze coin suddenly struck my ankle. The force with which it embedded itself into the metal railing reminded me of the explosion at the fortune-teller's stall in Bangkok's Chinatown 3 years ago, only the Dragon Pattern Bureau operatives used Hangbu Tongbao coins as hidden weapons. These techniques. I tightened my grip on the baton and turned. The 6 Gates Division or the embroidered uniform guards? The moonlight sliced through the steam pipes, revealing the figure of a man in a sun-bleached Zhongshan suit and cloth shoes. The sinewy veins on his feet coiled like ancient tree roots, a wooden plaque at his waist engraved with the word shape and will slays evil, its edges scorched with traces of deep blue chemicals. Xingyi sect, Ju Ben Heo. From the shadows of stacked shipping containers, the man shook off his oil-stained gray tweed coat, revealing a lean, panther-like waist. Before the words had fully left his mouth, the 30-something martial artist flicked the toe of his cloth shoe, launching himself like a cannonball with the shingy horse stance plowing through mud. The ground covered in fluorescent blue moss was kicked up into twin lotus-shaped vortices in his wake. The hairs on my nape stood on end. Even as my tactical goggles pupil tracking system caught the afterimage, an explosively powerful bung fist wrapped in hidden force was already crashing toward my face. I barely raised my baton in time. The collision between titanium alloy and knuckles sparked blindingly bright. Shu Benheo's knuckles stood out sharply, the veins on the back of his hand bulging violently. The moment his fist met the wooden staff, the distinct Xing-Chi sound unique to Xingyiquan erupted like a steam whistle, piercing my eardrums with its sharp intensity. Electromagnetic overload. I bit open the safety latch on my tactical belt as the baton instantly crackled with blue-white arcs of electricity. My name is Hai Feng. During my battle with Shu Benheo, instead of retreating, he unexpectedly surged forward. The explosive power unique to martial artists erupted from his spine as he unleashed the technique Dragon Form Searches Bone. He coiled around me like a python twisting a staff, his left palm transformed into a drilling fist aimed straight at my heart, while his right hand hit a swallow-style grappling move to seize my wrist tendon. Forced to abandon my stance, I spun backward in retreat, yet still, the sheer force of his strikes tore 3 bloody gashes across my chest. The pooled rainwater on the container roof was whipped into curtains by our furious momentum. Shu Benheo flicked blood droplets from his wrist, revealing corded forearms, muttering that Dragon Vein Bureau's intel was flawed. Then he hooked the short staff with his toes and tossed it skyward, adding that everyone said, Shadow, excelled in weapon combat and wielded decent blade skills. Before his words faded, he shot upwards like a hawk. Just as I reached to catch the falling weapon, his leg axe struck the staff first, sending it meteor-like into the sewage pond. Amidst the splashes of glowing blue liquid, his 12 animal form killing techniques poured down like a storm. Tiger pounces shredded my sleeve, bareback strikes shattered my bulletproof plate, his fists and feet left inch-deep dents across the container's surface. He abruptly shifted to the alligator floating in water stance, his arms coiling around my right arm like a crocodile's tail. Just as the sound of flesh tearing rang out, my tactical visor flashed red, the micro-electroshock device hidden in my molars discharged violently. The tower crane 30 meters away suddenly collapsed. Turns out he had channeled hidden force into the steel frame while dispersing the impact. Wiping blood from his nose, he laughed wildly, trading injury for injury? Interesting, let's go again. My baton once more cleaved through the curtain of rain as his swallow skimming the water strike aimed for my ribs. The man's dark gray Zhongshan suit absorbed all the neon lights, his cloth shoes leaving no trace on the wet pavement, only the Patek Philippe on his wrist reflecting cold glints. Ant factory assassins never wear watches. The detail made me hesitate for one fatal second. The alley was no wider than 3 arm spans, its brick walls covered in phosphorescent blue moss. My baton struck an AC condenser, sparks igniting the moss into neurotoxic mist, precisely the battlefield trap he'd laid. I hurled the baton to distract him and aimed a liver kick with all my might, only to feel like I'd struck a motionless elephant. Suddenly he shrank his frame, fingers darting to strike my knee hollow with surgical precision. As my right leg numbed, my tactical belt discharged shock pads, which his Taiji cloud hands diverted into the wall. I braced against a transformer box for an elbow strike, only to be sent flying 3 meters back by his bear-style mountain shoulder technique. Shrugging off my blood-soaked jacket to reveal gold bars stitched into the lining, I roared, 3 million. Untraceable bills, all yours. Plus this gold. Let me through. His tiger claw strike suddenly froze mid-air. I deliberately used underworld slang to test him. A real government agent would never respond to such talk. But his crushing fist abruptly transformed into a splitting palm, slamming the gold bar into the floor tiles, where the cracks formed the Ministry of State Security's covert signal, ceasefire. Gasping, I sat down. At least the agent before me wasn't an enemy. After clearing the battlefield, he kicked the gold bar with an awkward expression, muttering that my offer was too low. I sighed. Had I known, I'd have asked first. Pressing my relatively intact left hand against my bleeding ribs, I tore off the shredded tactical vest and tossed it into the filthy water. He was using the Xingyi school's unique abdominal kneading technique to treat internal injuries. I meant to say something, but guilt overwhelmed me. My voice dwindled until it dissolved into a cough. There's medical alcohol in the car fridge at the intersection. If we're working together, better disinfect quickly. Moonlight leaked through the cracks in the vehicle as we wordlessly high-fived. We then decided to travel together. My tactical glasses projected a fluorescent path, transforming the residual deep blue chemical traces in the air into glowing footsteps within the lenses. His Xingyi footwork followed closely, each step landing precisely at the center of the glowing prints. At a narrow alleyway, he suddenly halted, his splitting fist shattered the surveillance camera in the corner, his drilling strike smashed into the ground to disable the buried taste disruptor, and with a final explosive punch, he blasted aside the blocking dumpster, revealing refrigerated truck's tire marks underneath. Shaking blood droplets from his knuckles, he said, northeast, 700 meters. A mobile lab modified from refrigerated truck. As we reached the Cross-Sea Bridge, our tactical goggles suddenly sounded an alarm. Quantum taste barrier detected. The refrigerated truck vanished into the thick fog, leaving only scattered ice crystals behind. A phantom emerged from the ice crystals, pointing toward the abandoned dock under the bridge. There, changed boats. I asked, Lele? Seeing the silhouette nod in affirmation, we pressed on. By the time we reached the docks, only a dilapidated fishing boat vanishing into the thick fog remained. Too late. His fist struck the wharf's railing. At the abandoned dock at 3 a.m, my tactical glasses projected holographic data streams onto the container surface as he carved the security loophole map into the sheet metal with his Zingy-Iquan drill fist. The sound of waves crashing against distant reefs drifted through the air, mingled with the briny scent of the sea and a metallic tang. My fingers traced the holographic poster for the Master Chef competition floating in midair as I said, I know someone who once participated in a cooking competition at the ant factory. Though yesterday's squirrel-shaped mandarin fish made the judges spit out their first bite, the surveillance footage showed their Adam's apples bobbing when they swallowed. Maybe we can find a way to give her another chance. By dusk the next day when the rainstorm finally subsided, I arrived soaking wet in the back alley. And Shinshue was processing last night's failed dishes, her cleaver striking the cutting board with unusually crisp precision. Rubbing my nose, I began, about last night, without looking up, she interrupted, wouldn't dare trouble someone so important. Unlike idle people like me who just wait for ingredients to go moldy. I handed over the soggy smart appliance manual. On the way, I ran into. She interrupted with a cold laugh. Did you encounter aliens or save the world? Suddenly she held up that moldy dough hedgehog and said, look, this is the mascot your doppelganger transformed into. I pulled the sealed case from my tactical belt. Compensation for you. Her pupils contracted slightly at the gem fragments inside. Oh, switch to being a jewelry dealer now? My humble temple can't accommodate such a great Buddha. With that, she picked up the kitchen knife and bent over the chopping board to start julienning carrots. I took a deep breath and said, last night I met someone. The ant factory is pulling strings behind the scenes, they don't want you to win. The sound of chopping abruptly stopped. I took a step closer. Your squirrel-shaped mandarin fish, it was perfect. It let the judges taste real flavor. Then I pulled a holographic projection from my tactical belt. Here's their taste data. Their numb taste buds from the deep blue drug, only your cooking could awaken them. Projected data from the judges' electronic eyes flickered in the air, their taste nerve activity had spiked by 300%, with abnormal fluctuations in their brain's pleasure zones. She turned around, eyes glistening. So, it wasn't my fault? I folded my tactical shades. The semi-final entry fee's $1 million. I'll cover it. The lenses display account balance, the savings from these years, should be enough. She took a step back. Why would you, help me so much? I stepped forward slowly. I know who you are, right, little friend from nature? Only the ticking of the Polaris wall clock remained in the kitchen. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the kitchen knife. What nonsense are you talking? I approached steadily, tactical boots leaving wet trails on the floor. My gaze fixed on her slightly trembling chef's hat as I said, let me show you. Raising my hand, I paused my fingertips right above the hat's brim. She stumbled backward in haste, knocking into the counter as sweet and sour sauce spilled across the floor. Just then, the tactical visor suddenly alerted, abnormal energy fluctuation detected. When I was certain she had no escape route left, I gently removed her chef's hat. Under the dim lighting, her pointed elven ears were revealed, glowing with a pearlescent sheen. The tactical glasses displayed, elvish traits detected, ears contain lunar energy signatures. Her trembling fingers reached for her ear as she asked, how did you know? I pulled up the ancient text's projection and said, over a decade ago, you appeared at Moonlight Bay. Then I zoomed in on the image, grasped her hand, and said, your father, he was the fisherman who saved you, guarding your secret with his entire life. Pulling up the old photo, look, this is what he looked like when he was young. In the photo, the young fisherman cradles the unconscious fairy in his arms, while his tactical goggles display DNA test results, no genetic relation. She looked into my eyes and asked, what do you want to do? I grasped her hands, met her gaze directly, and said, come with me, let's awaken this city with your cooking. Then I pointed to the ant factory outside the window and said, let them taste what real delicacy is. Her apron shimmered with frost crystals, then the glow faded. Unconsciously rubbing her pointed ears, she said, you're the first to see through me right to my face. I pushed the tactical sunglasses up to my forehead, revealing the old scar on my brow, and said, years ago, while preaching the true God in a church, I saw similar runes on a wall steeped in Nordic doctrine. She suddenly froze and said, wait, I never even asked, what's your name? I was stunned. Didn't you see the arrest warrant ant group issued for me 2 days ago? She held up a moldy dough hedgehog and said, the wanted poster says dangerous element. I chuckled lightly, Haifeng. The Hai meaning ocean waves, the Feng meaning maple leaves. picking up the kitchen knife and carving into the cutting board. You there? Surely your name isn't really in Shinshue? As frost crystals formed at her fingertips to mend the knife marks, she said, Shinshue was given by my father. He said it was the morning it snowed when I appeared. The ice crystals refracted the snowy landscape in the morning light. Dawn coincided with the first snow. I unfolded the holographic map and said, with your culinary skills and my tactical analysis, we can develop dishes that will redefine the flavor matrix. She suddenly pressed her hand over mine and said, wait, there's a stain on your cuff. Ice condenses, cleansing the stain. The cuisine must be absolutely pristine. Before starting work, I instinctively reached for my tactical belt, but her ice crystals froze my fingers before the cigarette pack. My face darkened. No smoking at street stalls. She snatched the cigarette pack, crushed it into frost, and said, my kitchen is smoke-free. Then she suddenly leaned in and sniffed, saying, are you still smoking that black market low-grade stuff? My ears tinged slightly red as I stepped back, replying, your sense of smell, tactical sunglasses flashing with analytical data, is at least 3 times sharper than a military K9's. During their first collaboration in debugging spirit cuisine, her fingertips condensed spiritual energy into icy blades, effortlessly cleaving the sea base into peony-shaped slices. Meanwhile, I adjusted the quantum furnace with my tactical belt, precisely controlling the temperature to within 0.1 degrees Celsius. Then I poured in the sweet and sour sauce, and the entire kitchen erupted with blue auroras. She stared at the glowing dish and asked, is this actually edible? I swallowed hard and said, you taste it first. Tactical sunglasses scan for toxicity. I'll call an ambulance for you. Second trial dish. I think we can incorporate more of the high-tech cooking equipment specified for the competition this time, I said while hauling in a mysterious box from somewhere, its metal contents clanking ominously. The quantum oven emitted a buzzing sound like the flutter of a bee's wings. Gripping the kitchen knife, she watched as the perch suddenly thrashed on the cutting board. Stay still, she fumbled to pin down the fish's tail, the blade making a crisp incision that sliced off half its fin. Fish blood splattered onto my freshly polished tactical goggles. So this is elven blade work? Too precise. I wiped the glowing blue stain off the lens. People would think you're slaying alien creatures. Why yes, this fish is the problem. Her ears flushed pale pink as she protested, it just cursed at me through its gills. To prove her claim, she pressed the animal translator against the fish's gills. The perch immediately emitted an electronically synthesized childlike voice, stupid cook. You set the heat to lava mode. My thermometer confirmed the accusation. Someone had inexplicably dialed the quantum stove to 1200 degrees Celsius. As she scrambled to adjust the controls, the perch seized the moment to flip its tail, sending the sweet and sour bowl flying. The amber sauce arced through the air in a perfect parabola, landing squarely in my mouth as I was about to light a cigarette. Cough, cough. What kind of twisted anti-smoking measure is this? I exhaled plum vinegar-flavored smoke rings. My tactical visor scanned her trembling shoulders as she struggled to suppress laughter. Warning, chef's heart rate exceeding normal levels. Sedative injection recommended. I'm laughing so hard I can't breathe. She waved her biodegradable spatula as the stove flame shot up 3 meters with a whoosh. Suddenly, the smart wok emitted a mechanical shriek. Non-human DNA detected. Self-destruct sequence initiated. The pot handle sprouted 8 mechanical claws, clutching the half-cooked sea base as it lunged toward the window. I flung an electromagnetic lasso to snag the pot handle and was yanked clean off my feet. Now, grab it! Are these kitchen utensils going through puberty or something? So rebellious. She leaped onto the countertop, her silver hair tangling around the ventilation pipe to steady herself as an ice blade split the wok's circuitry midair. The out-of-control mechanical claw released the sea base, which I caught with a rolling dive. Its tail slapped my forehead with a sharp crack, leaving a red mark. Panting heavily, both of us stared at the unharmed sea base on the cutting board as its eyes rolled to reveal mocking white membranes. Suddenly, I pulled out a laser pointer and aimed it at the fish's head. According to Article 4 of the Wartime Ingredient Management Act, wait. She grabbed my hand. Let me try something. The ice crystals on her ear tips suddenly surged, flash freezing the entire sea base into a glittering amber. 3 minutes later, the thawed sea base lay obediently on a crystal plate, its flesh blooming automatically into peony-shaped slices. As I put a piece in my mouth, my tactical visor exploded with full-screen fireworks, flavor impact level, nuclear grade. How is it? She asked nervously, crushing a handful of dry noodles in her fist as she watched me collapse with a face gone deathly pale. Nth recipe test. The moment the quantum stove display flashed a heart pattern, I knew we were in trouble. You installed an emotional module in the cookware? I poked the lid as it spewed pink steam, my tactical visor scanning out absurd data, current cooking mood, honeymoon phase. The ice crystals on her ears were dripping with water. Didn't you say it yourself? Cooking requires adding a touch of humane warmth to the dish. Frantically tapping the control panel, the melting ice seeped into the circuitry, and suddenly, the stove burst into heart-shaped flames. The half-pickled cuttlefish twisted into knots inside the glass bowl, its suckers tapping rhythmically against the rim as if humming the wedding march. Turn it off! Turn it off, now. I grabbed the cryo gun and aimed at the quantum reactor, only to have it knocked aside when she slipped. Seizing the chance, the rogue squid catapulted into the air, its 8 tentacles gripping the ceiling chandelier as it sprayed rose-colored ink across the walls, scribbling recipes everywhere. Ink-stained almond tofu. I muttered the blood-red menu item while stepping back half a pace. Good grief, psychological warfare. Before the words could fade, the smart fridge suddenly popped open automatically. The previously failed Ice Emperor coral fish collectively resurrected, their charred fish heads bobbing while tap-dancing across the counter. Their frozen tails whipped the egg basket into spinning frisbees. I executed consecutive tactical rolls trying to catch the eggs, but failed spectacularly as the yolks coalesced midair into her furious face. How many times must I say it? Stop playing with ingredients. Holy hell, they started it. I flung a net over the frolicking fish, only to knock over the plum vinegar barrel in my turn. The burgundy liquid spilled across the floor, where it arranged itself with the scattered salmon sashimi into a perfect heart shape. She grabbed the liquid nitrogen spray gun with a sneer. You think you can teach me with skills like that? But her icy blast accidentally activated the smart kitchen counter's hidden program. The cutting board suddenly transformed into piano keys, playing for release with every chop. Truce, truce. I was dangling upside down with squid tentacles wrapped around my right foot, my belt caught on the chandelier chain. Deal with that first. I swayed, pointing outside where glowing dishes had attracted flocks of seagulls pecking at the scent lingering on the window glass. Oh no! In her panic, her fingertips unleashed chaotic waves of frost, instantly icing over the entire kitchen. The squid froze mid-meme pose on the chandelier, sushi rolls got stuck in heart-shaped formations within the walls, and the quantum stove's heart-shaped flames turned into crystal sculptures. We slid across the icy surface toward each other, bursting into laughter at the frozen chaos. My tactical goggles were frosted over. Congratulations, you've created a literally chilled comedy feast. Still better than you blowing up the kitchen. The tips of her ears burned crimson with steam. The ice-cold blade hovered 3 inches above the sea base when Enshinshua's fingers abruptly trembled. Between the fish's gill movements came an ancient chant, where moontides ebb and flow, silver scales high true flavor. Guided by the melody, she adjusted the knife's angle, the fish bones autonomously separating into coral-like formations. My tactical visor flashed wildly, flavor resonance detected. As the frozen coral base was served in a crystalline dish, frost blossoms crystallized in the kitchen air. The moment my chopsticks touched the fish flesh, my visor erupted in glitches while my wrist monitor's heart rate spiked to 180. My throat moved a dozen times before I could finally choke out words in astonishment. This flavor is goddamn incredible. And Shinshua's ear tips were tinted blue, a sign of her elf magic being overtaxed. I heard the perch say, it wanted to become a dish that moves people to tears, she murmured. My hand instinctively went to my tactical belt, fingers pausing at the cigarette case. And Shinshua conjured an ice crystal ashtray and slid it over, just one. Glancing at quantum stove readings, this dish can purify your lungs anyway. Outside, the rain thickened into a curtain, its rhythmic tapping against the windows like a countdown. And Shinshue traced wave patterns on the glass with sweet and sour sauce. Tomorrow's finals. I'm a little nervous. My tactical goggles flashed with a blue glow. Nervousness is a good thing. I pulled up the holographic map. Proves you care. Those judges have forgotten what nerves even feel like. And Shinshue gazed at the rain curtain. Do you think my cooking can really change anything? Her ear tips trembled slightly. I still don't fully understand my own abilities. I flicked away cigarette ash. Take your time. Tomorrow, I'll have your back. Lily's mist spelled out goodnight on the windowsill. Chapter 8, Bloodstained Farewell. The plasma kitchen shimmered in the morning light, floating cooking stations orbiting the central gluttony altar. And Shinshue stood before station 0912, taking a deep breath. She twisted her silver-gray hair into a bun, fastening it with the seashell hairpin left by her father. Nervous? I spoke up from behind her. Today I'd switched to a dark tactical jacket, with sunglasses clipped to the collar, revealing the old scar on my brow. And Shinshua's ear tips twitched. A little. She glanced suspiciously at the equipment belt around my waist. Why are you bringing so many weapons to the kitchen? For self-defense. I adjusted my tactical belt. And to keep an eye on those 3 robed creeps for you. I pointed toward the back of the judges' panel. Look, here comes the main event. Behind the judges' panel sat 3 black-robed spectators, all executives from the ant factory. Even with my tactical goggles scanning them, I only learned their names. Poison Mantis Tangjo, whose left arm prosthetic flashed with cold light from its mantis blades, deep blue medication capsules embedded at the joints, Data Glutton Himinogen, her liquid metal dress flowing with binary code, pupils spinning with data rings, Mirror Chef Louis Illusion, is half crying, half laughing mask emitting dual vocal tones as he stepped forward to announce the semi-finals. And Shinshue took a deep breath, ice blades forming at her fingertips while sweet and sour sauce swirled into a nebula inside the quantum stove. Let's begin, she whispered as if conversing with the ingredients. First came descaling, her icy blade drew a single light stroke, sending fish scales fluttering down like snowflakes. The crystalline apron automatically collected the shimmering scales, refracting rainbow halos under the lights. Then deboning, the ice blade glided along the fish spine with ethereal precision, its edge trailing faint luminescence as the bones separated into coral-like structures. My tactical goggles displayed, knife precision, 99.9%. Then came the slicing. The fish flesh automatically unfolded on the cutting board like peony petals, each slice perfectly even in thickness, while the ice blade produced a delightful ding-dong sound as it glided through. It's cooking time now, I murmured, and Shinshua nodded in agreement, deciding to start with deep frying. The quantum stove maintained a precise temperature of 180 degrees, and the oil in the pan shimmered like a galaxy of stars. As the fish hit the hot oil, her crystalline apron deployed a protective shield, shielding them from potential contamination by deep blue chemicals. Simultaneously, she began preparing the sauce. Sweet and sour liquid swirled in a glazed bowl, forming a nebula-like whirlpool. After adding Lele's ice crystals, the sauce took on a dreamy pale blue hue. Finally, it was time for plating. She used the coral-shaped fish bones as a base, layering the peony petal-like fish slices over them, while beams of light etched wave-like patterns along the plate's edge. And Shinshue gazed contentedly at her creation, unaware of the terrifying conversation unfolding silently among the judging panel. In the distance, the venomous mantis Tangjio's sickle blades were dissecting a bluefin tuna. As the blade sliced through the fish gills, he read the words on the floating surveillance screen with a cold smile. The guts are yours, the data goes to gluttony. The blood vessels in the fish gills suddenly crystallized into binary code, flowing along data cables into Gen Origami's liquid metal skirt. Her pupil's data rings spun rapidly, 76% of targets have entered. Noodle King's ancestral rolling pin contains anti-AI programs, priority elimination required. The mirrored Chef Louis illusion emerged from the reflection on Tangjio's knife blade, his laughing crying mask splitting into 4 petals. Why all the trouble? Later I'll mix some blue tears into the closing ceremony's rainbow cake, guaranteed to make them beg us to purify their taste buds. The sugar powder jar he tossed bore the logo of Ant Factory, fluorescent blue liquid seeping from its base. Shut up, performer. Tangjio flicked a fish eyeball towards Louis's reflection with his knife tip. Last time your subordinate accidentally let that woman from Old Gun's diner slip away. Screw up again. A blade flash later, the eyeball exploded on the mask, yet Louis's true form appeared 3 meters away in an ice sculpture decoration. Oof. Captain Tang's sense of humor is stiffer than a mackerel frozen for 3 years. Data cables suddenly shot out from Motegi Haim's skirt to entangle them both. VoicePrint detected abnormal fluctuations. Northeast 45 degrees. That man in tactical sunglasses is watching us. She pulled up surveillance footage showing me leaning against a spice rack, fingers unconsciously tracing old scars on my right arm. My pupils constricted to pinpoints beneath the sunglasses. Adjusting the focus filters, show Oraheim's lip movements magnified into slow motion. Lip reading perspective. The semifinals aren't cooking eliminations, it's a taste bud cleansing program. Her lips twitched mechanically, a side effect of the electronic tongue implant when judges eat dishes laced with deep blue catalyst. Louis's mirrored doppelganger suddenly blocked my view. I swiftly switched targets, capturing Tangjio's cursing lip movements. Those idiot chefs have no idea the grand prizes and factory lifetime membership includes body and soul. A squad of food vloggers carrying cameras barged into sight, forcing me to dodge sideways. Through the crowd's gaps, I glimpsed the real Louis making faces at the dessert table, his lips forming. The EMP activates during the award ceremony. All unregistered chefs' cerebral cortexes will get fried into standby mode. Cold sweat trickled down my spine. I reached for the anti-surveillance jammer concealed at my waist, only to find Minori Hikari's data cables creeping along the tile seams toward Shinshua's cooking station. When the glacial coral fish was placed before the judges, the quantum kitchen fell into momentary silence. The 5 judges' cybernetic eyes flashed in unison, their tactical visors displaying, taste neuron activity exceeds upper limit. The head judge raised trembling chopsticks. This aroma is truly miraculous. The gourmet scooped up a spoonful of sweet and sour sauce. Observe this perfect balance of flavors, like the palpitations of first love. The scientist inserted a data cable into the fish. Readings show quantum level taste resonance. This is impossible. Congratulations to contestant 0912 and Shinshua for advancement. As the electronic voice announced, 3 executives simultaneously looked up. Louis snapped his fingers, and the champagne tower at the judges' table suddenly exploded into a hall of mirrors, reflecting his fractured grin. Now begins the special round. Tangjio's mantis blades cleave through the cooking countertop, sending ingredients flying midair. Congratulations, everyone. You shall all have the honor of sacrifice for the Holy Banquet Project. Jen Oraheim's skirt flared into a massive data web, engulfing the stunned chefs in the front row. Body temperature 38.2 degrees Celsius, matches elimination criteria. Chaos erupted in the arena as the signature ramen containers of Old Man Vitality, a traditionalist chef, were electromagnetically sealed. Wang Lao's ancestral rolling pin got hijacked by data cables. The robotic arm chef's processor became corrupted by the deep blue chemical agent, while the molecular cuisine prince's VR goggles displayed garbled code. The condiment master lost control over his sweat glands, and Shinshua quickly turned toward the spectator stands. Food vloggers' drone swarms malfunctioned and crashed into walls, while ordinary audience members succumbed to hallucinogenic spores raining from the ceiling. The Ant Factory employees activated their protective shields, their expressions cold and indifferent. My tactical goggles flickered in the darkness as infrared scanning mode engaged. With one arm shielding in Shinshua, my other hand moved swiftly across my tactical belt. I fired an electromagnetic pulse round, but it was quickly neutralized, swallowed by the black curtain. Scan. Show me an exit. The sonar detector indicated a ventilation duct in the northeast corner. Turning back, my thermal imaging revealed Tangjo closing in, his mantis blades gleaming with a chilling light. Northeast corner ventilation duct, I hissed, as my tactical belt ejected a microcutter. A cold glint flashed before my eyes. I pulled in Shinshua down as we narrowly avoided the sweeping strike of a mantis blade, the edge grazing the back of my neck and shearing off 3 strands of hair. And Shinshua summoned an ice blade to counterattack, but it was corroded by the deep blue chemical spray from our foe. Her eyes burned so badly she couldn't open them. Haim Surya's sleeves billowed open as data cables sprouted wildly, coiling around my ankles while liquid metal spread across the floor. I flung a frozen sea bass straight at her face, the thrashing fish tangled the cables, and Shinshua, wiping her stinging eyes, seized the moment to corrode the data ports with sweet and sour sauce. Lewis Illusion's quantum cooking knife mirror clones surrounded us. I panicked, toppling the prep table, sauces splattered everywhere, disrupting the reflections. Meanwhile, Shinshua used her crystalline apron to refract light, creating blind spots in their vision before we bolted toward our destination. At the northeast corner, the ventilation duct was sealed with an electromagnetic lock. I tore off my ice crystal apron, prompting Shinshua to scream pervert, while emitting a blinding blue light that momentarily split the darkness. Fumbling for my tactical belt, I triggered the explosive device and slapped it onto the door lock. Close your eyes, I shouted. The detonation became a collision of searing light against black void. We tumbled into the torrential rain of the back alley, and Shinshua's elf ears drooped as she whispered, "Sorry, I haven't learned control yet." I ripped open my tactical jacket to bandage her bleeding fingertips, watching blood seep through my own waist wound. My apologies, I overestimated that door's durability. Police sirens wailed in the distance, mingling with Tangjo's blade-licking sneer. The hunt has only just begun. I remembered last night on my way home, the wreckage of the carousel crackled with electricity. Crouching under the rusted ticket booth, I recognized it as the fifth chance encounter with Lele's ice crystal signal. Suddenly, neon tubes rearranged themselves into the silhouette of a human figure. I smirked coldly into the void and flicked my cigarette but with precision toward the surveillance camera atop the Ferris wheel, saying, "Who knew the city even had a soul?" A freezing mist rose from the abandoned bumper carpool, where Lele's phantom sat in a twisted pumpkin carriage. The ice crystal spinning on her fingertip reflected scenes from beneath the ant factory, hundreds of unconscious children being transformed into living taste sensors, with a central electronic altar enshrining a pitchfork idle emitting black fumes. "The maw of gluttony will take form during the total lunar eclipse," echoed a multi-layered voice from the ice crystal. "Now we urgently need your—" "No need," I cut him off. "I'm retired." Lele suddenly appeared before me, her icy fingertip pointing at the gunshot wound on my left shoulder. "The girl you saved days ago, she's now designated as 0613, lying in the third level of the prison cell," she said. My tactical glasses flashed with encrypted files, precisely Annan's genetic sequence data. Humph, since when did city spirits resort to emotional blackmail? I lit another cigarette, its acrid taste mingling with rainwater seeping into my sleeves. "Using darkness to fight darkness, that's your signature recipe." The merry-go-round suddenly began playing music. The very tune Annan was humming on the night we parted before she was taken. My pupils constricted sharply. "Fine." I snapped off a neon tube and stabbed it into the ground, blue arcs of electricity forming tactical hand signals in the rain. Cooperation established. 3 conditions. I raised my fingers one by one, and with each condition stated, another neon light flickered out. Rule 1, don't read my mind. The ice crystal suddenly shattered. Rule 2, don't use kids as bargaining chips. Lele's phantom figure faded. Rule 3, I paused, sheathing the dagger, find a way to deliver fresh sea base to Old Gun's Diner every week. As the first morning light pierced through the dark clouds, Lele's ice crystal solidified into the shape of a sea base and landed in my palm. I weighed the icy fish and scoffed. This deposit, even the gills are replicated, this client is quite meticulous. Now I'm dragging Shinshui through pipeline-crowded alleys at breakneck speed, tactical boots stomping through puddles that splash indigo chemicals. Behind us, the razor-sharp sound of mantis blades hacking metal rings like a death knell. I spot red dots flashing at the edge of my tactical goggles. 3, Note 5 thermal signals closing in from all sides. Hold tight. I suddenly scoop and Shinshui up by the waist as my tactical belt deploys an electromagnetic grapple. We cannonball toward the rooftop just as Tangjio's blade slices clean through the metal staircase. A shower of sparks rains down where we'd stood mere moments ago, and Shinshua's hair brushed against my bleeding neck as she suddenly burst into laughter. I feel like this is a roller coaster. I nearly missed my footing. What are you talking about? This is life or death. When I was little, my father took me to the amusement park. She raised her voice over the howling wind. He always said, hold on tight and you won't be afraid. Before her words faded, Hada Oraheim's data cables shot out from the ventilation shaft like vipers. I spun around and flung cryogenic spray, the ice crystals exploding midair like carousel lights. Hold on tight. I wrapped my arms around her and leaped from the 7th floor height as the tactical belt's buffer engaged, and Shinshua's ribbons entangled with a grappling hook, swinging us toward the opposite building. This is the pirate ship, yeehaw, she cheered, the glowing blue arcs of elven runes tracing through the night sky from her earlobes. The moment I landed, Lewis Illusion's mirror clones charged from 3 directions. I kicked over a discarded food cart and casually tossed explosives, sending oil drums tumbling to trigger a chain reaction of blasts. And Shinshua seized the moment to conjure an ice slide, and we rode the flow of kitchen waste straight into the sewers. Hee, this beats any log flume ride, she exclaimed, wiping filthy water from her face. Tangjio's mantis blade cleaved through the manhole cover, sending deep blue spores drifting down like ghosts. I pressed her against the damp wall, our clothes forming a barrier against the poisonous mist. In the darkness, her ice crystal earrings illuminated my tense jawline. Haifeng, your heartbeat is so fast, she said. Shut up, I hissed through the glow stick clenched between my teeth as I checked my gear. Not everyone treats a life or death battle like a date. At least I don't. The moment we burst from the sewer, I crashed through a convenience store window. Grabbing bags of flour from the shelves, I hurled them at our pursuers. In the white haze, and Shinshua suddenly yanked me by the collar. Look there. She pointed to the neon-lit Ferris wheel. That's where father first taught me to fly. In the fleeting moment of my days, an ice lotus blossomed at her fingertips. Countless frost blades exploded like a carousel, sealing off all pursuit routes momentarily. I glanced at the tactical belt, 17% battery remaining. Blood kept seeping from the gunshot wound on my left shoulder, compromising my shooting accuracy, while my nostrils caught the distinct scent of quantum weapon lubrication unique to Lewis Illusion. And Shinshua watched as my sweat mingled with blood on the back of her hand, like melted strawberry candy. The deep blue spores drifted down like bubbles from an amusement park machine, while the trajectories of the icy blades dancing in the sky reminded her of the lanterns she had released in her childhood. I've arranged a vehicle at the station. My exhausted voice carried a thread of anticipation. Put on my tactical sunglasses now, they'll guide us where to go. Just tell me which way to run next. I can't fight anymore, I'm spent. And Shinshua adjusted the glasses, her eye sockets still warm from my touch. The spirit followed the signal directing our path while I mustered every ounce of strength to sprint with her, the outline of the train growing clearer by the second. Only a single carriage remained. Just as Shinshua's fingertips brushed the train door handle, the neon sign's silver shuttle flickered through the rain-streaked darkness. The warmth of my palm pressing against her back hadn't yet faded when she discovered the lollipop I'd slipped into her pocket, strawberry-flavored, lifted from the convenience store. The downpour intensified suddenly, falling in thick sheets. The true form of Lewis Illusion hovered on distant skyscraper billboards, his laughing weeping mask splitting into 12 holographic projections. The slender silver revolver in his hand had an Ant Factory logo and the molecular formula of a deep blue drug engraved along its barrel. Farewell, little mouse. All the mirror images pulled their triggers simultaneously. The tactical belt ejected the last 3 distraction rounds, and Shinshue turned to say something, but saw the rare smile at the corner of my lips. The trajectories of the bullets cutting through the rain curtain were unusually clear in elven vision. The first shattered the distraction rounds, blue light exploding like fireworks. The second I dodged with a tilt of my head, leaving scorch marks on the train's exterior. The third struck right between the eyebrows, my backward tilt resembling someone admiring the storm. Hey! And Shinshua's hand remained suspended midair, the lingering warmth at her fingertips washed away by raindrops. As I collapsed, my tactical belt automatically locked to prevent potential misuse. And Shinshua's cognition froze for a second. 0.3s, are you joking again? She remembered my earlier prank at the convenience store where I pretended to be dead. 0.5s, the tactical belt slid off the corpse, scattering equipment compartments haphazardly. 0.7 seconds, a burning pain flared behind her ear as eldritch runes abruptly materialized, a stark reminder this was no game. As she lunged toward the corpse, the train abruptly started moving. The autonomous driving program was my final gift, and through my vision, I grew farther and farther away. Come back, you haven't taught me. As the train plunged into the undersea tunnel, and Shinshua clutched the blood-stained lollipop. Suddenly, the sunglasses played my recorded message. If you hear this, please see the northern lights for me when you have time. At the tunnel's end, Lele's ice crystals spread like a starry river, reflecting the blue flames burning in her pupils. Chapter 9. The other shore. The silver shuttle train raced through the rainy night like a scalpel slicing through the city's layer of fat. My name is Haifeng, and at this moment, Xinshui had her forehead pressed against the bulletproof glass. Rain streaks refracted neon halos, fracturing her face into a mosaic of light and shadow. The overhead compartment lights emitted a cold blue-white glow, casting barred shadows across the empty seats like countless invisible prisoners accompanying her on this journey. The leather seats automatically adjust their angle every 3 minutes, emitting a sigh-like hiss as they deflate. She curled up in the window seat of the 7th row, the spot I'd chosen for her, close enough to monitor both exit doors, with the emergency brake valve just 2 steps away. A withered half-leaf of basil was wedged in the crevice of the chair's armrest, leftover from our last spice ratio experiment. Outside the car window, the city soaked by the torrential rain gradually shrank into flowing patches of color. The logo of Ant Factory flickered repeatedly on the illuminated billboards, its fluorescent blue queen ant emblem twisting into a grinning sneer on the waterlogged streets. Suddenly, Xinshui shuddered violently. The tactical sunglasses automatically dimmed the light, yet they couldn't obscure the image in her memory, me lying face up in the rain, looking exactly like the overturned bowl of sweet and sour sauce we had spilled. The ventilation system blew citrus-scented disinfectant that made her stomach cramp. The odor reminded her of my homemade lemon cleaning bombs. The car stereo began playing the piano B-side set, and with the first note, she saw raindrops condensing on the windshield, replaying that rainy night, blood beads mingling with raindrops on the tactical goggles' iris recognition zone, generating encrypted coordinates leading to Taiha Temple. The train plunged into the tunnel, darkness pressing like a medicinal gauze against her mouth and nose. She traced the tactical grooves I taught her on the goggles, a tactile cipher system. Raised dots indicated the ventilation duct's path, while zigzag notches corresponded to current intensity. When her fingers brushed over the cross-shaped groove, a sharp sting shot through her fingertips. The change in air pressure made her eardrums throb. Instinctively, she reached for her left ear but only touched a scabbed wound. She remembered me tearing off the goggles and thrusting them into her palm before taking the bullet, blood still smeared on the metal frame. The light shifted abruptly before my eyes as the train broke through the final barrier, the bronze bell tones of the Taoist temple piercing the rain curtain. Gripping the kitchen knife, she saw countless reflections of me in its polished surface, me adjusting the diopter on tactical sunglasses, me disassembling a collapsible batten spring mechanism, me wrinkling my nose while tasting her failed culinary experiments, and me drizzling sweet and sour sauce into the shape of a galaxy. The moonlight was swallowed by dark clouds as automated cabins emitted metallic death groans. In that moment of weightlessness, she understood the real weapon I'd left her, the shared dawns and dusks of life and death struggles buried deep within her gustatory memory. The train shed components until it shrank to motorcycle size. My hologram emerged from the sunglasses, twirling a tactical baton. Now it's your turn to take over. In memory, I held her hand guiding the knife. The way to fight vast systems is to conceal your strength within the most ordinary daily routines. The green rampart mountain emerged from the blizzard, and to Xinshui's upturned gaze, it appeared like a colossal beast shedding its skin. Wolf howls echoed faintly as the Taiha temple nestled within the mountain's cleft, its 3,000 moss-stained stone steps bronzed with age, inscribed with fading emotional sigils. When she crushed the slate engraved with the character envy, the moss spewed indigo spores, her tactical goggles identified them as solidified emotional residue. As she stepped onto the final ice-glazed stair, the temple's vermilion gates swung open unbidden. Brass bells chimed from the eaves, startling a white crane as an elder in slate-gray Taoist robes descended on mist, none other than the Taiha Taoist master himself. I received a dream visitation foretelling the silver-haired Rakshasa who'd come to dismantle my temple today, spoke the master. The main hall of the Taoist temple had no crossbeams, with 7 ebony pillars arranged in the Big Dipper formation. A bronze armillary sphere hovered beneath the ceiling, its copper chains tethering scripture-copying Taoists. The youngest apprentice's shackles glowed blue at the wrists. Abbot Taiha said my meditation weights tipped toward the anguish quadrant during cultivation. As temple bells resonated, the armillary sphere rotated, revealing emotional spectrums of past practitioners on the walls. Mine manifested as flickering cyan flames. Abbot Taiha led her to the mountain's frozen pool, its surface dotted with ice shards preserving cultivators' lost control moments. One fragment held my childhood profile, screaming into a blizzard. Afterwards, Priest Taiha led her to a room in the east wing and left. She traced the height marks I carved at age 12 on the doorframe. Beside the crooked line at the very top was my frustrated complaint about chanting scriptures. The brick floor bore depressions worn by meditation cushions, and the bookshelf held yellowed copies of the Yellow Court Canon. She pulled out the most tattered volume, causing dried honeysuckle flowers and a sword manual to fall out. At dawn, mountain fog seeped through the window cracks where she discovered my diary, faded to pale gray, hidden beneath patched window paper. When the night storm came suddenly, she curled up like a shrimp beneath the blankets. Half asleep, 15-year-old me stood barefoot by her bed, urging her to leave. In the dream, I carried her across the herb garden as honeysuckle petals drifted into her collar. The gunshot came abruptly. As I turned, tactical sunglasses materialized on the bridge of my nose. A bullet pierced my forehead, and through the blood bead, she glimpsed the alchemy chamber of a real Taoist temple reflected. Taoist priest Taiha appeared holding a lantern, illuminating her face brushed with cold moonlight. Finally, she broke into sobs. Yet outside the chamber, bitter winds swept past the temple eaves. The bronze wind chimes remained silent. Snow-laden pine branches shed their weight, shattering into silver mist within the moonlight. A temple acolyte carried a bronze lamp through the corridor. Behind the mountain, fissures spread across the frozen cliff as shadows slithered along rock surfaces. It caught the scent of rotten pine resin and aged blood scabs. Frost crystallized on lashes as pupils constricted to vertical slits. The cliffside snowpack collapsed, revealing crimson incantations. It retracted its forepaws as its breath crystallized into frost blades, while beneath the ice came a chain-like tremor humming from the depths. The moonlight was swallowed by thick clouds, and the pine forest echoed with continuous sobs, the last one lingering particularly long. As the side chamber door creaked open, the commotion from the back mountain ceased. Unaware, the temple apprentice didn't notice the gaze piercing through the vermilion-lacquered wooden door. Chapter 10, The Demon Hungers for Hearts. My name is Hai Feng. Beneath the cliff, deep within the icy cavern, a massive white creature slowly closed its eyes again. Melted snow seeped into the grooves of the incantations, meandering like fresh blood trails. At that very moment, the astrolabe in the Taoist temple's main hall suddenly shifted 3 inches. Frost patterns on the bronze dial emitted faint cracking sounds. The elderly nightwatch priest jolted up from his meditation cushion, his prayer bead string snapped, scattering sandalwood beads across the blue brick floor into the ominous pattern of an inverted Big Dipper. The embers in the kitchen stove suddenly turned blue, casting eerie shadows that twisted the portraits of past abbots into grotesque visages. The ink on the depiction of the third Taiha sect leader holding his sword began to bleed, transforming the painted figure's left eye into a chaotic inkblot, its position perfectly matching an old wound in the ice cavern. The creature in the ice cavern twitched its ear tips in feigned sleep, its cursed forepaw trembling slightly as razor-sharp claws etched fresh scratches into the frozen surface. At the third quarter of the midnight hour, the yellowed pages of records of demon subjugation in the topmost floor of the Taoist temple's library rustled without wind, settling open at the passage describing when the 60-year cycle completes with Mars lingering near Antares. Frost slowly crept along the century-old peachwood sword hanging from the attic beam, its coin-adorned tassel chiming, a sound that startled awake the dozing librarian buried in stacks of ancient texts. At the hour of Z, the Taiha temple was so quiet one could hear the moonlight shattering, and Shinshue curled up on the wooden couch, her shattered tactical goggles resting on the counter, their lenses spider-webbed with cracks, twisting the temple window's reflection into grotesque shapes. The candlestick resembled a hunched old woman, and the folds of the drapes concealed countless peering eyes. She traced the faded cloth tiger by her pillow countless times. It had once been her only playmate here. The stuffed belly of the doll was filled with aged wormwood, and on its muzzle, she had clumsily drawn 3 whiskers with cinnabar as a child, scrawling beside them the words "White Tiger General." The night breeze nudged open the half-closed window, and suddenly, the cloth tiger twitched in the moonlight, wisps of black mist seeping from its torn seams. As the night watchman's clapper struck thrice, the inkstone began to make a sound. "What's happening?" And Shinshue lifted her helmet, only to realize the inkstone was weeping. The wolf hair brush leaked inky tears, bleeding a distorted character for escape onto the title page of the yellow court scripture. The tactical goggles emitted a sharp buzz, the water in the brass basin began to boil, a drop of ink fell on the rice paper, transforming into the bullet that pierced my forehead, carrying a pungent scent. She grabbed my old patched-up Taoist robe and clamped it over her mouth and nose. Amid the mildew stains on the fabric, 7 amber eyes suddenly opened. At the hour of the ox, the mountain wind carried the wails of an infant, and the holes in the window paper began to ooze blood. Peering through the broken mirror shard, pitch-black tendrils slithered out of the soul-calming bell on the eaves, then the robe suddenly tightened around her throat. Choking, she saw the cracks between the beams crawling with vein-like mycelia. At the heart of this fungal network curled a human-shaped shadow, pulsing in rhythm with her pounding heart. The thing bore a human face, its mouth split wide to the ears, revealing layers upon layers of milk teeth. The entire chamber seemed to come alive as she stumbled and knocked over the cypress table, discovering its underside carved with crooked characters of fear, each oozing a corpse wax-like mucus. The demonic entity in the shadows finally took form. Its torso was stitched together from the patchwork clothes of my childhood, countless weeping mouths visible between the tattered fabrics, repeating in Shinshue's repressed longing. "You can't put vinegar in pork offal soup. Who told you I'm a gang leader? You can't hit me after making meatballs." When the tactical goggles magnified 100-fold, the shattered lenses revealed a blood-stained version of myself, hot pine resin dripping from the hollow of my right eye, my mouth uttering sounds from the moment of parting. "Run, why, live." Each torn edge of the demon's skin sprouted moldy cilia-like filaments. When Shinshui trembled from memories, those fungal threads stood erect like leeches scenting blood. The filament tips secreted a gelatinous halo, condensing the sorrow drifting in the air into frost-like crystals. A tumorous pouch bulged on its left shoulder, its surface patterned like Taoist temple roof tiles. And Shinshue's eye sockets burned as she heard the pouch emit hollow, echoing swallowing sounds. The instant her first tear hit the ground, the demon's pouch split into 7 petal-like orifices, sucking the tear into a thread of silver. The tear ducts wove patterns inside their sacs, gradually revealing the night I was shot. My final smile stretched into distorted parentheses, fragments of tactical belts endlessly falling through the tear film. The monster extended an infant's arm, clutching her hand to touch my shattered skull. The moment her fingertips brushed the warm brain matter, and Shinshue let out a kitten-like whimper, her molars chewing the word help into a bloody pulp. The cloth tiger fell from the demon's abdomen, its fabric blooming corpse spotted mildew where her tears soaked it. Suddenly, and Shinshue grabbed the bronze incense burner from the altar and hurled it at the demon, ashes exploding into turquoise mist. How dare you kill him? She howled, her right eye glimpsing through the broken lens of her glasses her foster father's fishing boat once more. Dad, is that you? Her voice trembled with shock and joy. The beast heaved barbed threads from its chest, ensnaring her ankles as it dragged her toward submerged memories. And Shinshue saw her childhood self standing atop a lighthouse, the orange life vest of her adoptive father flickering like a beacon amidst the raging waves. Be good, Xiaoxue, Daddy will catch the fattest perch for you. The fish-scented mint candy rolled in the evil spirit's throat, turning into viscous venom that dripped onto her collarbone. The wave from her birthday 7 years ago crashed over her face again, the briny taste mingling with the metallic rust of tactical sunglasses flooding her mouth. Dad, one day I'm gonna be head chef, just you wait. Then, 7 rusted incense burner chains pierced out from the demon's spine, their ends tied to the phantom figures of different people. The demon's chest hollowed into a rotted spinning wheel, its axle fashioned from snapped locust wood stumps. With every panicked breath and Shinshue gasped, the spinning wheel coughed out spider silk threaded with ice shards. The sticky strands clung between beams, weaving her anxious thought, will he see me as a burden? Into a cocoon. Childhood murmurs seeped from its core, but whenever she approached, the fibers abruptly constricted, branding her skin with bruise-colored curses. Huddled trembling beneath the table, she knocked over a vermilion inkpot. It's because I stole the temple offering fruit, so the sea god is punishing us, isn't it? A nightmare demon's milk teeth clamped onto her pinky, materializing childhood terrors into rotting fishing nets. You did this, it's all your fault. When the demonic incense burner's chain pierced her ankle, and Shinshue saw her foster father's fishing boat explode through the lens of her glasses, the salty sea wind choked her throat. Xiaoxue, catch the base. That day's shout suddenly twisted into a mechanical voice, and the leaping fish in the cooler revealed compound eyes like those from an ant factory. She clenched her teeth fiercely against the demon's fungal tendrils, broken teeth drawing droplets of blood from her lips. Why should I be the one to stay pure? The monster roared with laughter, exposing a cavity where its tongue should have been only an ancient-looking putty dangled there. Suddenly, the putty unfurled into a crimson, elongated tongue, licking at the steam of memories escaping from behind her ears. The temple bell patterns densely covering her tongue were grinding the thought of if only I'd said more into blackened ashes. Those ashes spewed from the fiend's nostrils, transforming into barbed loveguard spores that burrowed back into her temples. It's my fault. She clawed futilely at the fiend's decayed skin. All of you leave. Go! After toppling the demon, it revealed shadowy feet. Its right soul was a bottomless earthen jar, its surface plastered with Taiha Temple's talisman sealing evil thoughts. Whenever moonlight shifted 3 inches, the jar's mouth would disgorge pitch-black shadows that crept up in Shinshue's ankles along the tile seams. Shadows flickered with fleeting what-if scenarios. What if I hadn't been made to taste the new dish? What if that bullet had been noticed sooner? What if my slipping hand had been caught? Each hypothetical fermented into acid within the jar, eating through her instep to form venomous fistulas of regret. The fractured mirror showed me melting away, and Shinshue lunged forward, biting her lip bloody in agitation. Say something. Tell them we'll show them what we're made of. Tell me the championship is mine. Your promises were all lies. Shattered glass shards reassembled a bullet hole between my brows, my unfinished words gushing out with brain matter through the gaping wound. The demon's milk teeth were about to pierce in Shinshue's carotid artery when a chime suddenly rang out from the Sanqing Hall. Taiha's horsetail whisk brushed past the window lattice, and the sulcoming bell at the eaves released century-old morning chanting. The honeysuckle blossom on Shinshue's wrist suddenly came alive, its roots burrowing into the demon's incense burner chain. Foolish child, Taiha's voice drifted over with the embers from the character burning furnace. The tattered Huangting scripture in Shinshue's arms suddenly burst into flames. Where the flames licked, the demon faded into a straw effigy. Amid the ashes, fragments of tactical sunglasses formed half a smiling face. Chapter 11 Faded ink traces master. And Shinshue trembled, raising her head with red-rimmed eyes. I can't do it. The yin-yang fish on the Taoist priest's robe swirled on hurriedly. While inventorying the scripture repository last night, I discovered this item was surplus. I thought to entrust it to your care. As the morning light pierced through the soul-calming bells beneath the palace eaves, Taiha handed over a thread-bound book wrapped in blue cloth, and Shinshue lifted the dampened cover, the musty scent blending with the charred aroma of pine soot ink. My name is Hai Feng. I have a diary with a round-faced little man holding a wooden sword drawn on the title page. Above his head, the words "A Wandering Swordsman's Cultivation Journal" are scrawled crookedly, but I altered the smudged character for cultivation to read eating, and scribbled a note next to it. Master says cultivate the heart, who says eating candy cakes doesn't count? On the 7th day of the 3rd lunar month in the year of Jiazi, while practicing the 7th stance of crane soaring qigong this morning, my stomach started growling with hunger. The juju paste pastries on the altar were especially tempting, so I stole 3 pieces, only to be caught by old man Taiha. As punishment, he made me sweep the alchemy room. I secretly buried 7 pumpkin seeds in the incense ashes, hoping they'd sprout to spite him. Nearby, I even drew a picture of a pumpkin seedling wearing a Taoist hat. Later, when Shinshua's fingertips brushed over the dried sugar stains in my diary, she suddenly remembered the fruit drops I'd stuffed into her hand before getting shot. She probably wondered why I always hid provisions in the most bizarre places. Those memories of sweetness mixed with gunpowder now burned painfully at the back of her tongue. On the 23rd day of the 5th lunar month in the year of Jiazi, something strange happened to me at the cold pond behind the mountain. During morning practice, I saw ghostly faces floating on the water's surface, startling me so badly I dropped and broke my herb basket. The old monk Taiha said it was a demon of the heart and gave me 3 exorcism talismans. At noon, when I looked closer, it turned out to be my own reflection. I even drew a little stick figure falling flat on its back and thought about how plump the fish in the pond were. I planned to bring salt to grill them tonight. The sound of wind through pines outside the temple abruptly sharpened, and Shinshue gazed at the ripples trembling in the bronze basin and saw her own reflection upon my tactical sunglasses from our first rainy night encounter. She understood then that all fears are merely unrecognized fragments of oneself, like the youthful face I'd mistaken for a demon in the cold abyss. On the winter solstice of the Jiazi year, I accidentally knocked over ancestral offerings in the morning. Old Taiha punished me by making me copy the scripture of serene observation till my hands froze into carrots. That afternoon, I stealthily dipped my brush in vermilion to paint a fire-breathing qilin. My master chided, *anger is the fire in the heart that burns down the forest of merit. Feeling resigned, I added a puddle of urine to extinguish the flames beneath the qilin's feet and drew an irreverent temple boy pissing on the sacred beast. And Shinshua burst into laughter, her tears splashing onto the qilin's vermilion horn. Suddenly she realized that her days of raging fury had merely been a childlike, powerless venting, just like the urine stains in my drawings that could never quench real karmic fire. On New Year's Eve in the year of the ox, all my fellow senior and junior siblings had gone home, leaving me alone to keep vigil. I heard old Taiha drunkenly muttering nonsense. Turns out in his youth he'd had a secret crush on the tofu beauty. I teased him as a shameless old man, and he actually flicked my forehead. Only then did I discover that adults could blush too. I even drew a long-bearded old man with hearts above his head. The morning wind flipped through the pages, scattering dried dandelions across Shinshue's lap. She recalled secretly hoisting my used bandages. Those blood-stained gauzes were after all just another form of timid affection. The girl's secret longings and a child's unfiltered words resonated across the yellowed pages, vibrating through her chest with an ache. She hurriedly turned to the next page. On grain rain day in the year of the ox, last night's storm soaked my bedding, so I sneaked into old man Taiha's room to steal a blanket. Beneath his pillow, I found a portrait of a woman with the inscription on the back, Huin Yang passed away from illness in the 12th month of the year of the dragon. Ah, so I learned that the old man wasn't made of stone after all. He'd even drawn a Taoist priest weeping secretly under the moonlight. And Shinshua's fingertip lingered on the characters for passed away, when suddenly she remembered the night before her foster father set sail. So all losses were similar faces, like the little weeping figures I drew in the margins of my diary. On the Dragon Boat Festival in the year of the ox, I stole some Realgar wine and got drunk, babbling nonsense while hugging General White Tiger. Several junior disciples reported me. Old man Taiha said, grief is like the string binding zongzi, the more you struggle, the tighter it winds. But I wasn't grieving. I drew 300 smiling faces on zongzi leaves and buried them in the back mountain, only for them all to be gnawed by rats later. I still suspect that wine must have been fake. Tears blurred the ink on the zongzi leaves, and Shinshua saw the apple core she'd locked deep in her bag. Those yearnings too afraid to sprout were no different from self-binding strings after all. The turtle dove startled from the eaves scattered pine needles, one landing upright in her hair like an emerald hairpin. On the last page of my diary, I wrote, today I finally understand. Fear is worrying about losing candy, anger is being unable to defeat the mountain goblin, sorrow is missing father and mother. The old monk Taiha said face your true heart to find liberation, but I'll paint a silly face to scare them away. Soon enough I'll settle scores with those beasts. I even drew Zhongkue sticking out his tongue. As the morning bell from the Taoist temple shattered the last remnants of gloom, and Qinshue pressed the diary to her chest and finally saw clearly, all emotions stem from the purest childlike heart, fear rooted in attachment, anger in sincerity, sorrow in unrusted love. My silly faces trembled across the pages, transforming her scars into mended patches on Zhongkue's tattered robes. At the midnight hour, when the moonlight between clouds was being nibbled away like silkworms devouring leaves, and Qinshue was burying pumpkin seeds in the incense burner's ashes according to the coordinates in my diary, just another one of her pranks. Suddenly, frost flowers bloomed across the copper basin's water surface. She saw the reflection of a demon crawling out from her own spine, its patchwork robe stained with freshly healed tear scars. "Are you hungry?" she whispered. The cracks in her tactical goggles fractured the demon's visage into puzzle pieces. The spinning wheel in the creature's ribcage abruptly halted, leaving its 300 weeping mouths frozen in comical O-shapes. Without a breath of wind, the soul-calming bells beneath the eaves began to chime, yet they played the nursery rhyme tune of Rockabye Baby. Moonlight enveloped the east chamber like silkworm threads. The demon crouched in the rhombus of light cast by the window lattice, this time taking the form of my 7-year-old self. Beneath its tattered Taoist robe, ankles mottled with chilblains peeked out, while the bullet hole remained between its brows. And Qinshue whispered, "Are you cold too?" and pushed a warming pot toward it. The demon's pupils, like mint candies, reflected the starry sky from the night her foster father's ship sank. The fangs that once nodded memories now trembled like delicate milk teeth. Threads of sugar crawled up from its eye sockets to the demon's forehead, mending the bullet hole into a dimple. A cloth tiger tumbled from the monster's abdomen, and Qinshue picked it up to dust it off. When she pressed the pumpkin seeds I'd buried into the demon's palm, the memory-devouring mycelium suddenly sprouted soft yellow buds. Gradually, the clay urn embedded in the demon's right foot began to boil, spilling forth the salty spray from the shipwreck that had claimed her adoptive father. And Qinshue waded in barefoot, her ankles bloodied by the jagged rocks of what-if scenarios. The torrential rain poured through the roof, yet turned into hot springs the moment it touched her hair. The demon's asphalt-like skin flaked off piece by piece as the clapper sound startled night crows. The monster transformed into her adoptive father holding the fishing net from his lifetime. And Qinshue didn't flee. Instead, she removed her shattered tactical sunglasses and said, "Dad, look, my friend gave these to me. I really like them." The moonlight refracted through the lens wove into a net. Suddenly, the fishing net shrank into swaddling clothes, wrapping around a wailing ink-black infant. And Qinshue softly hummed the boat song her foster father had taught her, her fingertips brushing over the non-existent bullet hole on the baby's forehead. "That year, you held my feverish self on the deck to watch shooting stars," she murmured, and said every drop of seawater holds an unfulfilled dream. The demon's wails gradually transformed into the rhythm of crashing waves, its milk teeth turning to pearls in her palm. The demon shed its final layer of human skin, revealing the form of a child-shaped wisp of blue smoke. This was an unruly primordial spirit never disciplined by the Taoist temple, its hair pinned with stolen meteorite hairpins, clutching a copy of the scripture of purity and tranquility scrawled with ghostly faces. And Qinshue undid her bloodied hair ribbon and tied the phantom creature to the cut on her right wrist. "Bite here if it hurts." The demon child suddenly burst into loud sobs, its tears crystallizing into sacred relics upon hitting the ground. Fragments of devoured memories precipitated from the relics. She strung them into a necklace and placed it around the demon's neck. "These belong to you now." At dawn, when the first light pierced the clouds, the demonic entity had shrunk to the size of a palm-sized cloth doll, and Qinshue patched its belly with scraps from my old Taoist robe, the crooked stitches resembling misspelled words in a diary. Standing beneath the corridor, Taiha tossed her a cinnabar brush, and she inscribed the wandering hero's little sidekick across the doll's back. In the hour of evening, the morning bell emitted a hoarse, whimpering sound. The old monk tending it wiped the bronze bell's inner walls with deerskin, his fingertips brushing against several fresh cracks. He assumed it was from striking the bell too forcefully the previous month, unaware that the fissures' patterns mirrored the cursed fissures in the ice cavern behind the mountain. As Qinshue passed the bell tower wrapped in fur-lined robes, an icicle suddenly plummeted from the eaves. Amid the scattering fragments glinted a strand of silver-white beast hair, swiftly swept into the incense burner's ashes by morning chanting disciples. The sticky rice cakes in the kitchen steamer reeked with a fishy sweetness all day long, which the cook blamed on wild mountain bees straying into the earthenware jars. It wasn't until coarse salt crystals on the cutting board began oozing a rouge-like tint that he panicked and pasted talismans on the salt tub, a clear sign that the cinnabar used by the original sealmakers to draw blood curses had begun to decay. Patrol disciples from the back mountain always dozed off at precisely 3:45 in the afternoon, waking to find their boot soles crusted with frost that still carried traces of body warmth. They assumed it was just snow clinging to the pine trees they'd leaned against, unaware that the frost actually condensed from the chilling mist exhaled by the slumbering leviathan in the ice caverns. While cataloging the geographical chronicles, a library apprentice noticed the passage declaring where righteous Chi resides, no evil may intrude was fading. Just as he dipped his brush to rewrite the characters, its wolf hair bristles suddenly burst apart. The scattered strands rearranged themselves across the page into distorted claw marks. From the depths of the archives came the dull thud of a falling tome. The profound darkness manuscript, containing records of ancient sealing rites, had inexplicably vanished from its ninth shelf position only to be later discovered in the firewood shed, its pages now filled with curses transcribed in some primordial bestial script. I am Hai Feng, and Xinxue woke from her afternoon nap, startled by a nightmare. In her dream, she knelt on an icy plain sharpening a knife. The ice shavings scraped from the blade mixed with dark blood, gradually forming the outline of a colossal beast with a single horn. Every time she woke, she smelled the metallic tang of blood on her sleeve, yet the temple acolyte insisted the incense burning was the calming scent of cliffside cypress. During midnight patrols, the disciples began frequently hearing the sound of ice cracking. At first, it occurred every half hour, but soon the frequency increased until it became as dense as New Year's firecrackers. Holding their storm lanterns high, they would peer toward the back mountain and always see quicksilver flashes gliding along the cliffs. Yet when examined through celestial viewing lenses, only ordinary avalanche trails were visible. Though the night watch reported the sundial's shadow shifting 7 degrees day and night, the elder merely chuckled and dismissed it as the natural order of seasonal changes lengthening the shadows. No one noticed the eerie speed at which the icicles hanging from the cavern's ceiling grew, casting reflections of temple leaves by daylight, but by nightfall, their shadows took the shape of a beast's ribcage. From the shattered ice shards swept up by the novice, a frost-coated eyeball rolled out. By the time the duty elder arrived, the thing had already melted into a puddle of foul-smelling slush. At dawn the next day, before the haze of morning had cleared during the Mao hour, Taiha stood beside the bronze Shiji statue in front of the Hall of the Three Pure Ones, adjusting his bundle. The old Taoist had changed into traveling attire, a hempen robe covered by a straw rain cloak, with a redwood sword wrapped in purple copper wire hanging at his waist. And Xinxue noticed an astrolabe carved with constellations peeking from his bundle, wrapped in an old robe. Beneath the demon-repelling chain woven with Wu-Ti coins lay a yellowed photograph, its figures indistinct. He divided the aged cinnabar powder from the jar into 3 packages. As the mountain wind swept through the hall, talisman papers fluttered from his sleeves and spontaneously ignited midair, their ashes forming the shape of a wolf's head. The Taoist priest gazed at the sky with a complicated expression, counted on his fingers briefly, then picked up his luggage again. And Xinxue asked if he was going to visit an old acquaintance, handing him an embroidered box containing an artemisia sachet. Taihe used his sword tip to lift the sachet and sniffed it, saying he was going to settle a decades-old karma. Just then, a startled crow from the eaves suddenly circled back, snatched a white hair from his head, and disappeared into the sea of clouds. At the same time, under the eaves of the west wing, 2 young novices sweeping snow were tiptoeing to hang lanterns. The shorter one whispered that the ice pond on the back mountain had been emitting white mist every midnight lately, and the night patrolling senior brother said there were shadows 3 zhang tall in the mist. The older novice dismissed it as nonsense, saying even if there was anything, it must be the rice bag spirit that went missing from the kitchen days ago. Before he could finish, a young Taoist practicing handstands by the wall said he'd seen something extend claws from the white fog, leaving bloody prints as big as bronze basins in the snow. And Xinxue stood under the corridor, wearing my tactical sunglasses that automatically zoomed in on their frost-reddened ear tips. The youngest acolyte suddenly mimicked a wolf's howl, startling the icicles off the bamboo broom into a rustling shower, and claimed it sounded exactly like the one I'd chased away a decade ago. And Xinxue smiled without responding, returning to the east wing to wrap my tactical sunglasses and other belongings in kudzu cloth. The broken lens fragments shimmered with ripple-like patterns in the morning light. At Taiha Temple's mountain gate, 7 eternal lamps flickered in the wind. And Xinxue adjusted the diary's placement against her chest 3 times, finally bookmarking it on the page where I'd drawn a silly face as if she could trace my mischievous dimples through the paper. She gazed at the churning sea of clouds beyond the mountain steps. Distant wolf howls pierced the morning mist like an ancient farewell song. Dew from the gate's bronze nails dampened her fingertips, and in her final glance back, she noticed the newly patched hole in the east wing's window paper, the one she'd accidentally pierced while eavesdropping on the young acolytes the night before. The morning sun stretched the shadow of the temple's upturned eaves, exactly like the sword-swallowing Qilin I'd drawn in my journal. With a sudden boom, a tremendous wave surged from the rear mountain gate. The mountain mist was torn into cotton-like shreds by wolf howls, while outside the hall came the crisp sound of ancient cypress trees snapping. The 300-pound ginkgo wood gate flew into the courtyard like a sheet of paper, its surface bearing a massive wolf-shaped dent. The giant wolf stepped slowly into the courtyard just as Master Qingshu was leading his disciples through the 7-star steps on the icy surface. Turning his head, the morning light caught the spiraling scar on the wolf's left cheek, its fur around the scar gleaming with a metallic sheen as the scar itself writhed like a living thing, sucking ice shards from the air into a swirling vortex. Qingshu shouted to form ranks. 6 Taoists glided across the ice to weave a net of swords, frost creeping along their blades. The wolf's left eye condensed into a barrage of icicles that shot backward, piercing the youngest disciple, Yu Hengzi, through his right shoulder. Blood painted a fractured Big Dipper across the ice. The giant wolf's forepaws smashed against the ice, causing a bronze cauldron sleeping at the bottom of the pool to burst through the frozen surface, hurling everyone else into a 30-foot deep ice cavern. The commotion in the courtyard alarmed everyone, with Master Mingshu, who controlled the talisman array, bearing the brunt of it. The old Taoist priest leapt onto the flying eaves with ritual steps, his Taoist shoes scraping sparks from the glazed tiles. His wide sleeves fluttered up and down as 12 thunder talismans spiraled skyward along the 9 palace bearings, their edges flickering with intricate lightning patterns that interconnected. The moment the 8 trigrams formation took shape, all 36 eternal lamps in the temple flared violently, their flames drawn by the formation into dancing fireflies that wove a luminous net across the hexagrams. The giant wolf spewed forth cyan-purple flames, their cores pulsing with skeletal firehearts carved with inscriptions. Wherever the flames passed, even the air melted into distorted tunnels. The molten lead from the melted talisman began to plummet as the old Taoist was lifted by the wolf's tail, the jade pendant at his waist shattering with a crisp snap. The fragments tore through his Taoist robe, revealing the purple immortal silk undergarment embroidered with golden threads depicting the 28 mansions. Suddenly, the horn constellation position flared with a cyan light, burning scorch marks into the wolf tail's bristles. Master Mingshu swung his peachwood sword into the scaled armor, when the amber embedded in its hilt suddenly manifested the phantom of the first-generation Taiya. The spectral, wild-haired elder clenched the hilt and pressed down fiercely, as the eerie blue ghost flames flickering from the sword tassel unexpectedly carried the chanting of the scripture on deliverance. In the recesses of the bell tower, the blood Mingshu spat out snaked along the bronze bell surface, forming an inscribed decree. Under the moonlight, the blood trails evaporated into mist tinged with the scent of sandalwood. Mingshu tried to warn, but the wolf tail shattered him mid-sentence. Covered in barbs, the tail abruptly extended 30 feet, coiling around the old Taoist's waist and slamming him into the bell tower. The bronze bell tolled and dented into a human shape, while Mingshu's peachwood sword remained embedded in the wolf's tail, its tassel igniting with eerie blue phantom flames. Just as the beast prepared for its next charge, Uncle Xuanzhen's burly arm blocked its path. When Xuanzhen roared, the phantom of a white elephant surged around him. The floor tiles beneath his steps shattered into powder from the sheer force, each footprint leaving lotus-shaped chi imprints in the snow. Xuanzhen raised his right hand high, fist as large as a clay pot, its surface shimmering with Sanskrit letters reminiscent of a golden bell shield. But the moment it struck the wolf's belly, ice-blue marrow erupted from the gaps in its hide. This fiend had refined frost into its very bones. The recoil traveled up his arm in reverse, his elbow cracking 5 times in rapid succession. So stunned was Xuanzhen that he didn't even notice the bone fragments piercing his own cheeks. The colossal wolf mockingly crouched down, the scar on its left face suddenly splitting open to reveal a third eye. Xuanzhen felt as if struck by lightning, as all 7 orifices erupted with blood mist. The veins at his temples bulged like earthworms, while the tendons at the back of his neck twisted violently into the shape of the Big Dipper. The Taoist temple's forbidden technique, 7 stars lock of life, activated autonomously to protect its master. Kneeling in the shattered ice, Xuanzhen watched as his bleeding wounds crystallized into crimson ice in the frigid air. Suddenly, he burst into maniacal laughter at the sight of his grotesquely twisted right arm, the sound mingling with the taste of broken teeth and bone fragments, declaring that he hadn't even unleashed the full power of his primordial chaos force. With a thunderous roar, he forcibly wrenched his broken bones back into place with his left hand. Instantly, blood mist sprayed from all 360 major acupoints across his body, coalescing into a crimson Qilin totem amidst the blizzard. As the wolf's right claw came crashing down, Xuanzhen didn't evade but instead surged forward. His blood-soaked fist, wreathed in scarlet energy, collided squarely with the claw's center. The moment of impact sent a shockwave rippling outward, lifting the snow within a 10-zhang radius into a circular storm, while the ice crystals melted under the intense heat, raining down as molten glass. The icy blue marrow splashing from the cracked wolf-scale armor ignited into pale blue cold flames upon contact with blood, twisting like fiery serpents up Xuanzhen's arm. He seemed oblivious, his left hand gripping the webbed toes of the beast while his right leg swept like a battering ram across the monster's knee joint, the sheer force of his kick simultaneously snapping 3 ice pillars as thick as embracing arms. Veins bulged like exploding cords on Xuanzhen's neck as he miraculously wrenched the giant wolf's forepaw off the ground. The instant the beast lost balance, he vaulted onto its neck, knees clamping its ice-spiked vertebrae, flesh torn and curling back from the glacial spikes, yet he paid no heed. Fist-sized strikes rained down like hailstones upon its third eye. The dojo reverberated with phantom roars of the Kuei beast. Just as the icy protective film over the wolf's pupil began fracturing, Xuanzhen suddenly transformed his fist into piercing fingers, 2 iron-forged digits stabbing toward the eye. But the scarred blood vessels reversed their flow. An invisible force field twisted his fingers into contorted spirals mere inches from impact. The demonic beast jerked its head violently, hurling me toward the forest of Dao De Jing stone steels. Mid-air, I swiftly twisted my torso, hooking the steel's apex with my left foot to cannonball myself back into the fray with redoubled lethal momentum. This time I clamped my jaws onto the wolf's ear, my canine teeth sinking deep into the icy cartilage. With a sickening rip, I tore off half the ear in one brutal motion. Yet the moment blood sprayed forth, the barbed wolf tail suddenly softened like octopus tentacles, coiling around my waist and slamming me violently into the ground. Crash! The ice shattered beneath me. Coughing up frozen shards, I sprang back up with my left arm dangling uselessly, but my right fist ignited once more with crimson wind. I launched myself skyward atop crumbling fragments of ancient inscriptions, streaking toward the wolf's vulnerable underbelly like a falling star. Behind me trailed a swirling haze of blood, painting the very essence of my lifelong cultivation across the frozen air. Heavenly Fury Strike, H-ah! The giant wolf's third eye abruptly contracted, spewing forth a blizzard spear solidified into physical form. At the moment the blood fist collided with the ice spear, time seemed to freeze. I saw the core of the ice spear encasing the remnant souls of my senior brothers who had been devoured over the years, and I also saw the heavenly fury energy on my fist's edge burning away the last drop of my vital essence. Ice crystals crept up my beard and hair, and I, an outer sect grandmaster, grinned widely. Senior brother, does this junior's fist technique meet your standards? Amid the roar of the blizzard swallowing human figures, the ice spear pierced through my chest, pinning me onto the plaque of the ancestral hall. Frozen blood cascaded down along the 4 gilded characters reading, "The Tao models itself after nature, refracting a prismatic halo in the morning sun." The massive wolf's scarred left cheek twitched as it voraciously devoured the drifting blood chi I had scattered. Master Yukenzi's toes lightly touched the cracked remnants of stone tablets as her left hand horsetail whisk erupted with silver filaments like an inverted Milky Way, while her right hand unsheathed a sword that released a pure crane's cry. The character "Slay Evil" carved on the blade glowing crimson with vermilion light. Sun position, summon wind and thunder. She pivoted with fluid steps, driving the blade into the vulnerable webbing between the wolf's toes. As the tip met the icy scaled armor, the seal script crimson glow burned through the frost like branding iron, splattering foul azure blood across her Taoist robe's front. At the precise moment the wounded wolf recoiled its claws, Antmaster switched the sword to her left hand. A hidden mechanism in the whisk's handle deployed bronze divination slips engraved with the 7 bamboo tablets of the cloud satchel, raining like tempest into the fissures between the beast's abdominal scales. The demonic beast's throaty growl shattered the icicles clinging to the eaves, its amber right iris suddenly reflecting the image of Jade Dust Child at 14, the very moment she first entered the Taoist path. Soul-stealing sorcery. She bit her tongue till it bled, using the sharp pain to shatter the illusion. With a backhanded flick, her blood-stained horsetail whisk transformed into a silver dragon, its electrified strands coiling around the wolf's reversed scales. Seizing this fleeting moment of stalemate, she vaulted onto the wolf's back. Her longsword traced patterns of blue lotus blossoms in the air, each blade's energy precisely striking the junctures between its spinal spikes. Break through the union of Kan and Li. As her 5th strike pierced deep, a violet talisman flew from Jade Dustchild's sleeve onto the sword pommel. The moment the paper burned to ashes, true fire erupted along the blade, surging through the cracks between bone spikes into the wolf's body. The colossal wolf shook its head wildly, its spine erupting with icy flames that towered over 10 feet high, flinging her along with her sword into the air. Jade Dustmaster twisted her waist midair, her horsetail whisk's silver threads latching onto the shattered copper chains of a celestial globe to swing back. While in motion, she hurled the gourd of Realgar wine from her waist. Upon meeting the true flames, the wine transformed into 9 fiery serpents that slithered into the wolf's internal organs through wounds already inflicted by divination stakes. The demonic beast let out a muffled roar of pain like distant thunder, its massive right paw sweeping through the air only to shatter in afterimage. Meanwhile, Jade Dustmaster's true form had already darted beneath the wolf's belly by stepping on the U-steps diagram, her sword thrusting upward straight for its heart. The blade plunged 3 inches deep but could advance no further. The wolf's sternum was forged from century-old frigid iron. As the sword emitted a groan of strain, she decisively abandoned the weapon and arched backward, her whisk's silver threads weaving a web-like cushion in the snow to break her fall. Seizing the moment, she grabbed a broken halberd and thrust it toward the wolf's eye. A hail of ice spikes shot from the beast's third eye, grazing her shoulder and instantly frosting her Taoist robe with jagged ice. Staggering, she leaned on the halberd for support and suddenly chuckled, "Good beast, let's see you handle this one." The bloodied left hand swept across the broken sword, and the Taiji fish inlaid in the hilt suddenly flew out of its sheath, swelling into a massive yin-yang millstone midair. As the giant wolf raised its head and howled under the formation's pull, she channeled her lifelong cultivation into her right arm, thrusting the broken halberd like a streak of light straight for the beast's throat. The final sword strike blazed brighter than the rising sun. The martial ant merged with her broken halberd, transforming into a crimson streak that pierced through the wolf's neck. The demonic beast wailed, spewing blood mist laced with ice blades, yet she tumbled out from the other side of the crimson fog, clutching only half of the shattered halberd shaft. The horsetail whisk's silver filaments snapped strand by strand, forming fragmented 8 trigrams patterns on the snow, while the longsword evil-slaying vibrated ceaselessly where it was embedded between the webbing of the wolf's claws. Leaning against the broken steel of this scripture of converting barbarians, the martial ant slid slowly to the ground. The jade hairpin in her bun broke with a snap. Watching the soulfire dissipate in her palm, she lifted her gaze to glare furiously at the colossal beast. The morning sun pierced through her gradually translucent body, casting a sword-dancing silhouette upon the ice. From the ice-blue demonic energy spouting from the bloodied hole in the giant wolf's throat, faint remnants emerged, her 14-year-old self practicing a sword formation beneath wisteria blossoms, holding a whisk for the first time. As young Shojin dragged his broken leg across the wooden steps of the bell tower, shards of bone scraped against the stairs, leaving winding trails of blood. Below his right knee was nothingness, where an ice spike had pierced through earlier, the wound now crystallized visibly, icy blue frost creeping up his thigh like venomous vines. The moment his fingers brushed the bell striker, faint light shimmered across the cloud-like inscriptions on the bronze bell surface. The words proclaimed to all spirits abruptly transported him back to that stormy night 10 years ago. Back then, he was just a young novice stealing temple offerings, punished with bell tower duty after knocking over an everlasting lamp. When thunder split the night sky, he sought his master, drenched in blood, strike the great bell. The sound waves solidified into a golden net amid the rain, ensnaring demons breaching from the back hills. The tolling of the bell is the tolling of the Tao. The master wound the iron chain around his wrist with his dying breath. When the day comes you no longer hear its chime, it will be your turn to strike. Master, today your disciple. Shojin coughed up blood-flecked foam as he wrapped the chain 7 times around his waist, the ice crystals already creeping toward his heart. From the direction of the scripture hall came the thunderous cracking of beams collapsing. The giant wolf's scarred left eye was voraciously sucking in millennia-old texts, pages from the Yellow Court Canon and Ain Talisman scripture burning midair, becoming nourishment for those demonic pupils. He took a deep breath and gripped the bell hammer, ice shards at his broken leg splintering as he exerted force. The first resonant dong shook snow from the eaves. The apparition of the sect's founding master emerged from the bronze bell's surface as its 24 solar term engravings ignited one by one. The sound waves crashed into the colossal wolf, dark mist seeping from the gaps between the demonic beast's scales. Within that fog emerged the faces of all its past victims, the missing kitchen auntie from 20 years ago, the senior sister who never returned from demon slaying 15 years prior, little novice Mingxin who just mastered swordflight last month. The heavens are unmerciful. Shojin roared as he swung the second hammer blow, blood from his torn tiger's mouth staining the bell ropes crimson. This time the toll manifested 300 golden-armored celestial soldiers, only to freeze into amber statues in icy mist before touching the wolf's tail. The monstrous wolf's right paw smashed the scripture hall's inscribed plaque into splinters. One shard slashed across Shojin's cheek. The third toll! The third toll! He bellowed, tightening iron chains into his own flesh as the hammer swung in a full moon arc. Bronze fragments erupted from the cracked bell, forming the Big Dipper constellation midair while sound waves wrapped around Heart's blood. Shojin spat forth, transforming into a crimson and gold Vajra pestle blazing with exorcism power. The ice arrows shot from the giant wolf's third eye collided with them, and in the exploding ice crystals, countless fragments of the past emerged. He saw the year he was 9, on the Ghost Festival, when his senior sister carried him piggyback out of the mountain gate to secretly watch the river lanterns. As countless lotus lanterns drifted downstream, my senior sister pointed at the largest one and said, "When Shojin grows up and becomes a bell master someday, I'll fish it out and remake it into an evil-warding bell hammer for you." On the day of my 10th year examination, she deliberately let her flying sword be shaken loose by the bell I struck, winking as she said, "Our Shojin will surely be Qingyuan Mountain's finest bell striker in the future." But the beast did not halt its advance, its fangs piercing through the demon-subduing pestle as Shojin heard the brittle snap of his own ribs cracking. He spat out half a tooth mixed with ice fragments and suddenly laughed aloud. "Senior sister, listen well. This is the true toll of the bell." With the fourth strike, the bronze bell shattered explosively, sending 36 stalactite-like bronze nails pouring down like a torrential rain. As he watched the sharpest one pierce the giant wolf's chest, Shojin seemed to see the phantom of his senior sister take up the bell hammer, just as she had when teaching him to strike the bell years ago. Gripping his bloodied wrist, she whispered softly, "Follow the force, or you'll make the melody slip away." The freezing mist pierced his pupils carrying flecks of bell fragments, as Shojin mustered his last ounce of strength to snap the iron chains. In his final moment of descent, he glimpsed wolf hair brushes drifting in the dawnlight, their shadows flickering against the remnants of the Taoist temple's upturned eaves, resembling countless lotus lanterns floating downstream during the River Lantern Festival. Boom! Within this non-existent fifth toll of the bell, Shojin's body shattered upon the broken bronze bell. Bloodstained bronze fragments flew autonomously toward the scripture repository, embedding themselves into the door panels to form an incomplete version of the scripture of clarity and stillness. The blood flowing from the giant wolf's left eye seeped into ground crevices, resurrecting the devoured scripture characters which reignited across the ice. Amidst the bell tower ruins, two overlapping bell tones echoed eternally, one hoarse like the master, the other crisp like the senior brother. Chapter 13, Demon Subjugation. Now as I stared at the giant wolf, its nostrils quivered in the icy wind as if still searching for something. Its boulder-like head hung low, the spiral scar gleaming in eerie cobalt blue under moonlight. The monstrous beast stood 2 stories tall when it reared its chest, its silver-gray wolf fur tinged with frost white at the roots, every strand glistening with tiny ice crystals. With each growl, the wind would freeze into needle-sharp icicles in the air. Its red eye glowed with a murky amber hue, the iris frozen with countless tiny air bubbles that reflected the ruins of a Taoist shrine from every angle. Its left eye socket was swallowed by a spiraling scar, a bottomless vortex where flashes of lightning occasionally crackled, decades of accumulated blizzard fury roaring within. Its fangs weren't mere bone, they were sheathed in translucent black ice that imprisoned shattered fragments of peachwood swords from vanquished Taoists, while the very tips still held undigested fragments of crimson talismans frozen in the crystalline spikes. The most airy detail was its wolf paws webbed with translucent membranes between the toes, leaving frostflower patterns blooming across the blue bricks where it tread. With each breath, icy blue bone spikes emerged along the protruding vertebrae of its heaving spine. And Xinxue stood atop the collapsed upturned eaves of the Sanqing Hall, undoing her hair tie as her ash-white locks whipped like battle banners in the blizzard. Slowly removing her tactical goggles, her right eye had completely transformed into golden-green vertical pupils, while the left remained human black, a sign of her incomplete elven bloodline awakening. "So you're searching for him too," she murmured, ripples shimmering across her golden-green slitted eye before she donned the goggles once more. The massive shadow continued slithering through the ruins like living pitch. The spiral scar on its left cheek still writhed, grinding absorbed debris into powder, while icy blue blood seeped from the gash on its abdomen, sizzling like solidifying pine resin with each drop. The blue bricks cracked brittle in the extreme cold, their shattered fragments whirling up with the night wind like paper money scattered for the dead. Save me. Under the collapsed beam of the alchemy chamber, a young Taoist lay trapped, his right leg pierced by an ice spike. The crystallized edges of the wound were slowly consuming his flesh. The giant wolf's breath frost formed instantly over his hair as it exhaled above his head, cutting off the Taoist's pleas mid-sentence. Terror had seized his throat. The beast's amber right eye shifted slightly, reflecting the priest's contorted face in its pupil, yet it regarded him with the indifference reserved for rotting meat. The hem of the Taoist robe brushed against the broken icicles on the eaves, producing a sound as delicate as silkworms devouring leaves. Suddenly, the giant wolf's ear tips flattened backward, a movement brimming with killing intent, yet it reminded Xinxue of the stray cats behind convenience store windows, adopting the same expression when fighting over food. The mountain winds swept up the dying embers from the alchemy chamber. The monster's tail slowly rose high, its mucus stretching into icy threads like spider silk in the air. And Xinxue noticed its right forepaw remained suspended, a ring of dull scorch marks around the joint, the exact imprint left by the earlier 7-star sword array. The metallic taste of blood filled her throat, recalling the times her foster father taught her to gut fish. At 415 years old, she still couldn't grip the slippery base firmly, her blade always veering away from its heart. "Follow the grain," her foster father had said, his calloused palm covering her trembling fingers. "Fear makes the blade slide." The colossal wolf's forepaws sank 3 inches into the floor tiles, and instantly the ancient century-old cypresses outside the hall collectively tilted eastward, their roots snapping like dislocated joints. As the beast's claws tore free from the ground, 6 ice spikes erupted from the fractured tiles, and Xinxue pivoted to evade the first wave of triangular ice spears, her toe tapping against the slanted incense burner lid to propel herself skyward. Whoosh! The second volley of icy projectiles grazed past her fluttering hair strands, embedding into the corridor pillars to form crystalline bars. Tucking into a midair ball, she glimpsed the abnormal fluttering of scales on the wolf's vulnerable underbelly, their rapid opening and closing resembling butterfly wings trembling before a storm. At landing, and Xinxue deliberately collapsed toward the alchemy room ruins. Broken tiles lacerated her palms, yet she caught the distinct acrid sting of sulfur powder. As the wolf's whiskered tail lashed toward her, she seized a handful of sulfur-mixed scorched earth and flung it at the creature's blazing eyes. The icy crystal lashes erupted in green smoke upon encountering sulfur, and the demonic beast let out an earth-shattering wail. "I see it. The weak spot is on the third toe," she confirmed as she rolled into the dead angle of a broken beam, spotting the crimson pill dissolving between the icy scales of the wolf's claw. With every strike of the beast's right forepaw, that flicker of crimson pulsed between the gaps of its scales, like a dancing ember in the darkness. Fear wrapped around her heart like spider silk, yet it strangely distilled into an unusual clarity in her blood. And Xinxue could feel her irises vibrating rapidly, the ice dust kicked up by the wolf's claws decomposing into slow-falling crystal clusters in her vision. The colossal wolf spewed a frigid current from its maw. Now she could even discern the hexagonal structure of each ice crystal. Among them, a frostflower carried a dusting of vermilion powder from the Taoist temple. Under the threat of death, her hearing morphed into another form. In the low-frequency growl rolling from the wolf's throat, she distinguished two intertwining sound waves, one emanating from the beast itself, the other originating from the depths of its spiraling scar. At the instant the dual sound waves resonated, and Shinshua lunged left half a second early. Ice spears blasted a half-foot crater where she had stood moments before. With a crash, her back shattered an osmanthus wine jar, its aged liquor soaking through her robes. For half a second, and Shinshua froze, then suddenly clutched the broken shards in her palm. As the potent wine aroma assaulted her senses, golden green patterns shimmered across her skin, awakened by her sprite lineage. The moment the giant wolf pounced, she smeared wine across her eyelids. The world abruptly lost its colors, revealing only the eerie blue glow pulsating at the monster's heart, while the crimson pill lodged in its claw emitted a molten radiance. As the wolf's tendril-like tail lashed out, she leaped onto its back across the icy shards, thrusting a pottery shard toward the glowing core. Yet this mortal weapon shattered 3 inches from its heart, the backlash flinging her into the ruins of a side chamber. And Shinshue crashed open the cedar chest where the Taoist priests stored their scriptures. Yellowed pages of the classic of purity and tranquility scattered like white butterflies. Amid the fluttering papers, she glimpsed an insulated tape-wrap knife handle protruding from her luggage, the little gadget I'd secretly slipped into her backpack that night. The looming shadow of the colossal wolf blotted out the sky, and Shinshue curled her body and rolled through the flurry of shredded paper, until her fingers finally closed around the strangely shaped plasma kitchen knife. The knife handle retained a lingering warmth. Sapphire electric arcs danced along the serrated blade, illuminating the eerie runes writhing within the scars of the demonic beast. With a flick of her fingers against the plasma edge, and Shinshua matched the high-frequency vibrations hummed to the rhythmic scrape of scaling fish with a kitchen knife. As shattered fragments of tactical goggles swayed precariously on the bridge of her nose, she suddenly caught the cloyingly sweet stench seeping from between the wolf's scales, a deadly allure reminiscent of preparing pufferfish. Meanwhile, in the sensory realm of the giant wolf, the world abruptly flipped upside down. The ruins of Qingyuan Mountain transformed into a blue and white patterned cutting board, while broken bronze chains of the armillary sphere became twists of straw tying up ingredients. And Shinshua's figure expanded infinitely in its vision, her white apron unfurling beneath the moonlight like an all-encompassing burial shroud. The demonic beast realized with horror that it now lay upon the icy prep table, its scales transformed into fish scales awaiting descaling, its spiral scar tissue becoming bruised flesh requiring excision. Most terrifying was the chef's knife dancing with ghostly blue electricity, its tip tracing lethal meridians like a master chef inspecting marbling thickness in prime steak. Fifth intercostal space, 3.5 inches against the scale pattern, she murmured while stepping back, as wolf claws shattered flagstones at her feet. Amid flying debris, the plasma blue arc flashed in perfect crescents, precisely severing the sensory tendrils at the wolf tail's tip. The severed tissue struck the ground with the crisp sound of shattered truffle chocolates, and Shinshua's earlobes trembled slightly. The sensation was indistinguishable from cleaving through Wagyu beef's snowflake fat layers. The colossal wolf's pitch-black pupils suddenly contracted, spewing frost mist that solidified into a spiderweb in midair, and Shinshua twisted her body to evade as her blade sliced through the ice web's warp and weft with a crack-crack sound reminiscent of dismantling a king crab's claws. As segments of the crystalline ice web dissolved in blue light, she heard a bubbling gurgle rise from the wolf's belly, a rhythm mirroring the pulsating veins in a bluefin tuna's fatty belly. The life-or-death battle transformed her adrenaline into aged liquor, dilating in Shinshua's pupils to their limits. The entire demonic beast materialized in her vision as butchery diagrams. The wolf's spine became mackerel bones with untreated fishiness, its icy scales turned into rough unshucked oysters, while those indigo veins beneath scar tissue resembled squid in confused Italian pasta. Found it. She suddenly dropped into a knee slide, her plasma blade grazing the wolf's soft underbelly. Amid sparks flying from metal scraping against frost scales, she distinctly heard the viscous sloshing of splitting open glacier salmon for roe. The weak point wasn't the heart, but the gallbladder. Her hair whirled madly in the howling wind stirred by the wolf's claws as Shinshuo charged through the flying black tresses. At the moment when plasma blades pierced the icy scales, she flicked her wrist with the precision of a chef preparing blowfish. Threads of blue light wove into a net, peeling away layers of icy defenses to reveal a pulsating azure gallbladder deep within. Its surface was etched with patterns resembling Taoist temple talismans, undoubtedly the core of a demon beast. A sharp click sounded as the massive wolf's dying howl shook loose residual snow from the eaves. Yet Shinshuo wore the focused expression she reserved for tasting experimental dishes in the kitchen. Tilting her head, she listened to the rhythm of the gallbladder's contractions like a chef awaiting the perfect reduction moment for red wine braised oxtail. I can still recall how gracefully it happened. When that azure gallbladder swelled to its critical point, I guided the plasma blade tip to pierce precisely through the membrane connecting gallbladder to liver lobe. The movement was as refined as separating foie gras from its veins. At the moment when I sheathed my blade for the last time, it felt as though the entire Qingyuan mountain was chanting the rebirth mantra. Chapter 14, Leaving the Mountain. I plunged the plasma kitchen knife into the wolf carcass's heart, the faint blue arcs scorching an aromatic char on its icy scales. Under my practiced technique, the giant wolf's body transformed into a translucent celestial map of ingredients. My fingertips traced the demon beast's ribs as icy crystal bones automatically separated, producing chime-like tones when falling into the bronze alchemy furnace. These frost bones require 7 days of gentle simmering for soup. I poured the remaining morning dew from Taiha Temple into the furnace. 3 drops of grayish-white teardrops fell into the furnace fire, causing the yellow quartz scripture inscriptions on the alchemy furnace's surface to glow faintly. In an instant, the rich aroma of century-aged liquor wafted out. Then I continued preparing the next dish, determined to restore this Taoist temple to its former vitality. The giant wolf's heart unfurled in the icy pool water, gradually shedding its frozen armor to reveal crystalline clusters like pomegranate seeds within. Using my broken sword as a blade, I sliced the heart valves into cicada wing-thin pieces, garnished them with angelica and snow lotus remnants from the alchemy chamber, and buried them in a pine root clay urn. As rainbow light began spilling from the urn's mouth, the unconscious abbot Mingshu suddenly sat upright, expelling frost-blue poisonous mist from all 7 facial orifices. This is... The old Taoist stroked his newly grown black hair in astonishment, noticing 30 years' worth of martial arts calluses had vanished from his palms. Frozen heart sashimi, which I believe should be paired with a temporal urn. As I spoke, I lifted the urn's lid only to find it completely empty, shocking even myself. Grandpa, how did your hands move so fast? Mingshu chewed on the wolf heart sashimi, the rising spiciness in his throat involuntarily reminding him of the stolen shots of Shadaozi liquor from his youth. When the thunder talisman flew from his sleeve, its edges crusted with frost-like sugar crystals, what exploded upon hitting the cliff wasn't lightning, but a blizzard infused with the aroma of Sichuan peppercorns. So the charm was missing a catalyst. He licked the ice fragments from his fingertips. It needs to be simmered with rage and marinated in sorrow to become a masterpiece. While extracting the marrow from the wolf's spine, I noticed each segment glowed with different constellations. Pouring the celestial pivot segment of the monster's marrow into the ruined armillary sphere, the Ursa Major-shaped ice crystals reassembled on the instrument's plate, while the rest gradually congealed into a paste, which I scooped to present to Elder Xuanzhen. When Xuanzhen bit into the first mouthful of wolf spine marrow paste, the explosive chill in his throat recalled the morning wind atop snowy peaks. His fractured ribs groaned like grinding glaciers as icy blue patterns spread from the wound across his entire body, forming translucent ice armor over his bones. He clenched his fist and struck the ground. Shards of ice exploded into mist with the force of his punch. The normally indomitable primordial fist technique now carried the biting chill of a blizzard. The master said external martial arts are brittle when pushed to their extremes. He gazed at the flickering ice flames dancing in his palm. Now, with hardness and softness combined, this truly embodies primordial unity. Beads of sweat had already densely covered my forehead, yet I knew this was no time to rest. I approached Shozhen's broken body, lifted him up, and poured the remaining marrow ointment into him. Under the expectant gazes of the assembled crowd, blossoming ice peonies suddenly sprouted from Shozhen's newly regenerated legs. Rising to his feet, he walked toward the ruins of the bell tower. When his fingertips touched the bronze fragments, vine tendrils spontaneously wove themselves into a bell hammer. The first reverberating chime of the bell dispersed the mountain mist, its sound waves carving the entire scripture of the Salvation Sutra across the sea of clouds. No iron chains needed, nor flesh and blood. He gazed at the wisteria blossoms swaying with the bell song. I am the bell is the Tao. How does it feel? Shozhen stared mesmerized at the flowering vines and sunlight. It feels like my first time riding a sword, when the fresh wind billowed through my sleeves. After some rest, I turned to examine the giant wolf's forepaw, that massive terrifying limb now molten into glassy gelatin within the sulfur flames. To this I added honeysuckle nectar salvaged from the ruins. Where the icicle had pierced Mingxin Daozhang's right shoulder, crystals of icy lotuses blossomed as he sipped. The youngest jade balance master stealthily licked residue from the bowl's rim, then suddenly pointed at the cloud sea and shouted, I see it. I can actually see the spiritual energy flow of the mountain protecting array. Wolf-tail tentacles simmered into golden broth in the bronze cauldron. The remnants of the entire Taoist temple began to resonate. Master Jade Dust scooped up a ladle of wolf-tail golden broth. The floating and sinking Tao Te Ching runes in the broth seeped through his lips and teeth. The broken sword Evil Slayer suddenly flew up from the ruins, the taiji fish pattern on its hilt radiating a sapphire glow. I snatched the sword midair, and the sword energy I swung condensed into ice lotuses in the void. So the purity of the sword path. I gently stroked the frost patterns on the blade, isn't about severing worldly attachments, but about embracing all things within its edge. Nodding, I scattered the ashes of the library into the broth, where complete Tao Te Ching runes surfaced on the liquid. The severely wounded Taoist priests sat circled around the broken bell. The moment they drank the golden broth, the shattered inscriptions rearranged themselves automatically, and the soul-calming bells at the eaves chimed without wind. The spoon in Master Qingshu's bowl suddenly transformed into a crane and flew away, while a cinnabar seal lit up between his brows. This isn't just healing, it's pure enlightenment. The ancient cedar stump in the courtyard burst forth with new shoots, turning the ice shards that devoured spiritual energy into jade-like dew. At midnight, the eager-eyed priests watched as I took out the final treasure hidden away, dual-colored ice beads refined from the eyes of a giant wolf. When the left eye's ice bead was embedded into the 3 pure ones plaque, centuries of accumulated snow evaporated instantly into clouds. When the right eye's dark pupil was placed into the alchemy furnace, a phoenix reborn from flames flew out. Already sated with food and drink, the priests began chanting the supreme and wondrous scripture of infinite salvation in unison, while scattered ice dust reflected silhouettes of my cooking. From the wounds torn by wolf claws grew spiritual veins carrying the fragrance of mugwort. Deep within the shattered Tao foundation bloomed a 9th-grade golden lotus nourished by demonic beasts' spiritual energy. The bonfire licked the edges of the bronze cauldron, its thick wolf-bone broth aroma mingling with caramel-colored steam to weave a warm-hued net amidst the ruined temple. The gathering sat around broken walls holding bowls carved from ice peonies, floating with star-like oil swirls. Squatting by the fire, I used a plasma knife to slice the last strip of wolf meat. The translucent slice, wrapped in sunset glow, melted on the tongue, making even the most reserved jade dustmaster unconsciously reach for another bite. This skill might surpass even the imperial chefs of old. Xuanzhen licked the ice crystals at his bowl's bottom. But when did our temple hide such a culinary immortal? How have I never seen you in the kitchens before? Before his words even faded, a mutter came from the corner. That old man Taiha is too unkind. If he'd said earlier that there's an elf girl locked in the East Wing who can both cook and subdue demons, who'd still fear that ice wolf causing trouble. A few young acolytes giggled along, tapping their bowls with chopsticks and jeering. Exactly. Hiding it away, are you scared we'll steal your secrets? I lowered my head to fiddle with the fire, my tactical sunglasses sliding down to the tip of my nose, revealing golden green pupils. The firelight danced upon my lashes, uncannily like the flickering embers in the hearth when Haifeng taught me to control the flame. I'm not locked up here, I murmured softly. I came to repay a debt. The phrase repaying debts abruptly silenced the air. Amidst the gurgling of the bronze cauldron, someone caught sight of the scars on my wrist, old wounds left by the constricting tendrils of demonic spores, now coated with a frost-like layer of crystalline sugar. Uncle Jade Dust, you saw it coming all along, didn't you? Shozhen suddenly spoke. Jade Dust set down her sword, fingertips gliding along the rim of the bowl. Her Taoist robe was still stained with wolf's blood, yet she no longer hurried to wash it. The karma of this world, can it ever be severed with mere words like should have known? A pine nut burst in the fire with a crackle, like the lingering echo of temple chimes. The embers in the bronze cauldron grew faint until someone added a handful of wolf hair ashes, making the flames leap up with a whoosh, painting my face the warm golden hue of sugar art. Nissen, the young Taoist in the corner, finally couldn't hold back, clutching a gnawed-clean wolf bone. Why did you really come to Greenwall Mountain? Surely not just to make sashimi out of demon beasts? The crowd erupted in laughter, but Jade Dust's gaze remained fixed on the sudden tension in my shoulders, her hand thoughtfully resting on her sword hilt. For Haifeng, I heard myself say, my voice lighter than the congealed oil flowers in the cauldron. Uncle Xuanzhen's ice armor suddenly cracked with a crisp snap. The brute who once punched through wolves' bellies now hunched over as if his spine had been plucked out. Staring at the floating wolf meat in his bowl, he suddenly asked hoarsely, "That damned kid, is he doing all right now?" Over a decade ago, when Haifeng stole his secretly stored realgar wine to pickle laba garlic, he'd said with the same guilt yet shamelessness, "Uncle, wine only stays wine when drunk. Keep it stored and it'll turn to vinegar." He died, on the way bringing me here. A burning pine branch suddenly crackled, its sparks landing on Xuanzhen's ice armor and melting teardrop-shaped holes. He grabbed his gourd for a swig, but the liquor spilled down his chin instead. Yukenzi abruptly laid her sword across her knees, its blade reflecting a certain dusk from her 20s. Haifeng crouched under wisteria vines nibbling stolen altar fruits, grinning as he offered half a peach pastry when caught. "Senior Sister Yuchen, Sweet's Hone Sword Chi, you know. Did he suffer at the end?" she asked, tracing the sword hilt with her fingers. "Probably not." I downed the osmanthus wine in one gulp, its heat burning down my throat. The bullet went straight between his brows. The snow suddenly fell harder, yet no one sought shelter. I abruptly stood up and fished out a handful of sun-dried heavenly peppers from my pack. "My name is Haifeng." Those chili peppers she found in the mountain's icy crevices had been tempered by extreme cold into bearing a fire-like pungency. With a flick of her wrist, she scattered the peppers into the bronze cauldron, saying, "Spice can dissolve stagnation and also tear off scars." Then she ladled a spoonful of crimson broth over an ice bowl. In the rising steam emerged the silhouette of my foster father's fishing boat. She continued, "The secret Grandmaster Taiho wouldn't tell is perhaps like this spicy soup. Drink it too soon, it scalds, drink it too late, it chills. Only at the right time, with the right person, the ladle tapped the cauldron's rim, its lingering note shaking snow from distant peaks, can one brew the most painful freshness. Master Jade Dust lowered his eyes with a faint smile, tossing the remnant talisman tied to his sword tassel into the fire. The blue smoke from the burning paper twisted into the character's forked predestined fate midair, only to be shattered into stardust by the night wind. In that moment, I understood. Whether lamenting Taiha's decisions or marveling at serendipity, it was all just like an underpickled cucumber wedge. The true Tao had already written its answer in that single stroke when Shinshui cleaved open the wolf's heart. After everyone retired, and Shinshui wrapped my tactical goggles in rainy cloth, the fractured lenses rippling with dawnlight patterns. The cedar box held neat rows of treasures, half a diary saturated with wolf blood, a necklace of glacial fangs, century-old medicinal frost scraped from alchemy furnace bottoms, and an assortment of trinkets from our companions. She lifted the plasma cleaver, its blade spontaneously humming the rhythm of the classic of purity and tranquility, the last lingering spiritual energy of the ruined temple resonating through tempered steel. She stood atop the 3,000 bluestone steps looking back, as the Taiha temple was being cooked amber by the morning light. The rear mountain gate torn by the giant wolf yesterday was now overrun with emerald vines, while Shojin's newly grown legs dangled over the cliff edge, the vine tips blooming peonies as big as bulls. Yu Hengzi sat atop the reassembled copper chains of the armillary sphere, fingertips guiding visible streams of spiritual energy, weaving the remaining wolf hairs from the ice pond into star-shaped wind chimes. Between the corridor pillars once studded with icicles, Master Qingshu used wolftail golden broth as ink to write remnants of the Huangting scripture in the empty air. Countless characters condensed into golden powder in the morning mist, drifting onto the young Taoist's newly tailored spring robes. And Shinshui noticed the window lattice of her temporary lodgings in the east wing now bore salmon roll-like strings of red berries, the blessing ornaments she'd casually mentioned by the frost pond's edge. The mountain wind brushed past the bronze whistle hanging at her waist, its surface still encased in the icy shell from when it was retrieved from the giant wolf's stomach, bearing the crooked Xia character I'd carved over a decade ago. She pressed the whistle to her lips and blew a fragment of the tune she often hummed while cooking at roadside food stalls. The broken note startled a flock of cranes into flight, and within the current stirred by their wings, she suddenly caught the salty pungence of her foster father's cabin, the fish sauce jar she'd overturned at age 7, its contents seeping deep into the deck seams, the mint candy clutched against her chest on a stormy night at 15, melted by body heat into amber tears, and the chili powder that had slipped from my drunken fingers on the day we first met, staining the ground like a spilled sunset. A searing pain flashed across her palm. Looking down, she saw the fairy markings on her collarbone rearranging themselves. The golden-green luminescent traces before her eyes were no longer imitations of the Taoist temple's defensive arrays, but contorting into totems of soup spoons and wheat stalks. Gazing at the churning sea of clouds beneath the mountain, she glimpsed the silhouettes of countless towns drifting within them, souls hollowed by azure potions, taste buds gnawed by mechanical ants, seasons blurred by industrial flavorings, all waiting for the true feast to awaken their gustatory spirits. She remembered what I said, stay alive, but she had no intention of obeying. Time to leave. She scattered the last handful of wolf hair ashes into the mountain stream, watching them solidify into white lotuses upon touching water. At that moment, the morning bells of Qingyuan Mountain rang simultaneously of their own accord, startling loose the honeysuckle petals that had somehow tangled in her hair. At the mountain gate, Master Mingxin came running with freshly picked ice persimmon fruits, but froze mid-step upon seeing her silhouette. The girl who once cowered trembling beneath the altar now stood with a spine straighter than thousand-year-old pines. The plasma kitchen knife in her backpack's side pocket sliced the dawnlight into sashimi-thin blades, refracting glimpses of unventured rivers and lakes yet to come. She also heard the awakening voices of all things in her veins, rice and wheat crackling with fragrance in cast-iron pans, sea bass revealing its growth rings on the chopping board, even the bitter wine from deep valleys calling for a revolution of taste. Chapter 15, The Fall. The rain kept pouring as I lay on my back in the puddled water, my vision shattered by the downpour. Neon signs smeared into blood-red blurs on my retinas, the dull pain in the back of my skull alternating with a burning ache between my eyebrows. I tried to raise my hand to press against the gruesome hole in my head, but my fingertips only met with thick, warm liquid. Am I dying? Before my consciousness sank into darkness, I seemed to see an ant's panicked face, countless ants roaring at me, and the ancient gods splitting their colossal mouths in mocking laughter. I began to fall, no pain, no temperature, only millions of stars streaking past my sides. I looked down and found myself adrift in the void, my coat disintegrating into tiny points of light. From afar came the thunderous shudder of chains, followed by the gradual emergence of a massive shadow beyond comprehension, a giant bound by 7 chains of starlight, liquid starlight weeping from beneath its bronze mask. Mortal, your death is interesting. The giant's voice sent ripples through the entire space. Suddenly, I could breathe again, catching the iron scent of rust and smokeless gunpowder, as war drums rumbled from the depths of memory. I looked up at the colossal hammer beside the giant and frowned, your ball. The giant was moved, with a hint of confusion, for few knew his true name. Mortal, since you found your way here, what is it you seek? I lowered my head. I don't know either. I just felt so tired. Perhaps the time for rest had finally come. Baal's voice carried ancient majesty. I was once one of the pillar gods under King Solomon's throne. Thousands of years ago, the Norse gods coveted my power and schemed to imprison me here. They feared I could shatter their carefully woven order, feared I could overthrow their dominion. These chains were forged from mortal souls. Each chain represents a fate controlled by the Norse gods. And you, I sense an uncommon balance within your soul, equally capable of maintaining clarity amidst chaos and finding breakthroughs within order. That's exactly the quality I need. I sighed. So you chose me because I can help you break these chains? Baal nodded. That's not all. I need an ally who can shatter the established order. The universe craves chaos, and among these stars all governed by the gods, perhaps mortals are the greatest variable. I thought to myself, how could I possibly be worthy? You must have the wrong person. The bronze mask cracked open, revealing swirling nebulae within. Sever these chains, they are forged from mortal souls. As payment, the sparks from the chains coalesced into a radiant screen. I shall return you to the world of the living. I drew closer to the chains and discovered each one was engraved with twisted human faces silently screaming. Upon touching them, fragments of memories flooded my mind. Sacrificed children, deceived heroes, betrayed lovers. These souls wailed in eternal torment. What will happen to them if I release you? Their souls shall return to dust and re-enter the cycle of rebirth. Baal's voice carried a metallic tremor. But consider carefully, mortal. Freeing an imprisoned deity may bring consequences more terrible than death itself. I closed my eyes, gripping the chains as searing pain shot through my palms. I choose to believe you. Since I'm already dead, this worthless life is all in now. Silver flames spread from my palms as the chains began to shatter. With each broken link, a soul dissipated into points of light. When the final chain snapped, the entire space trembled violently. Crack! Baal's bronze mask split apart, revealing sculpted, handsome features, his hollow eyes igniting with sparks of fire. An interesting choice, mortal. Baal stretched his limbs as starlight swirled around him. What is your name? Hai Feng. Very well, Hai Feng. Baal stretched out his hand, stardust coalescing into a long sword in his palm, while the remnants shimmered into a suit of armor. This is my gift upon our first meeting. First, I must reclaim my power. Let us go to Valhalla and greet that old friend. The rainbow bridge stretched beneath our feet, its seven-colored radiance interlacing into the path to Valhalla. Baal led the way, his footsteps sending ripples across the arched surface. I tightened my grip on the sword in my hand, its hilt cool to the touch. I gazed toward the towering Valhalla at the end of the rainbow bridge, its golden splendor flickering in and out of view amid the clouds as the war drums draw ever nearer. Swordsmanship isn't my strong suit, I thought to myself. Ready, mortal? Baal glanced back at me, a playful glint flashing in his eyes. Your first companion awaits us in Valhalla. When I opened my eyes, what first caught my attention was that magnificent sunset, its golden rays shining upon my face, warm and gentle. Following the light, my gaze traveled beyond the sun to behold dazzling stars twinkling brilliantly. Beneath that ethereal Milky Way stood an immense city wall in the distance, seemingly endless to the naked eye, from which a tremendous rainbow arched forth, pointing toward the other end of the world. My previous fear instantly vanished as I thought, damn, this is awesome, while turning back to look at Baal and saying, so it's just a portal after all. I thought you'd be chanting some weird incantation to bring me here. The distant screech of ravens sent a shiver down my spine. Chapter 16, Escape. When the first drop of chaotic blood seeped from the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree, the one-eyed Allfather foresaw the shadow of Ragnarok. Odin sacrificed his right-eyed Mimir's well to gain wisdom, yet the future he beheld was the thunderous collapse of the Bifrost beneath giants' feet. This prophecy, bought with eternal pain, gave birth to Valhalla's primal purpose, to forge an inexhaustible war machine before the final battle at Doomsday. The Valkyries follow the strict hero selection law, sending the most elite third of the fallen warriors to Valhalla. As their golden wings sweep across the battlefield, they trigger the scale of Honor, a judgment mechanism embedded in the rules of this universe that evaluates a warrior's worth through hundreds of parameters such as weapon wear and wound distribution. And now, the training grounds of Valhalla echoed with the clang of metal. I gripped the stardust longsword tightly, sweat dripping from my chin. The Valkyrie opposite me lowered her spear, her golden ponytail gleaming in the sunlight. That's enough for today. I slumped to the ground, staring at the blisters on my palms from gripping the sword hilt. It had been a week since I arrived at Valhalla, and every day was spent either training or watching other Einherjar battle in the arena. Tyr would occasionally come to inspect. The god of war merely standing there was enough to make one's breath catch. What am I doing? I stared at my reflection on the sword's surface, as memories flooded uncontrollably, the girl lying on the park bench beside me, my reflection in the glass of the roadside eatery, the crimson rose blooming in the rain, and the swirling starlight in Baal's eyes. Can I truly trust an imprisoned deity? What are you thinking? The voice of the pillar god came from behind. He had changed into casual clothes, looking like an ordinary Nordic youth, only the starlight in his eyes gave away his true identity. I gazed at the distant Valhalla Hall, its golden dome gleaming in the twilight, and said, I'm wondering, what exactly is the trial you've arranged for me, and why should I accept it? To go home? Or to prove something? Ball sat down beside me and handed me a mug of mead. You're scared, he said. Damn right. I took the glass, my weary face reflected in the amber liquid. I've seen them train, some could even cleave the Bifrost in half. Me? I'm just an ordinary guy who can't even take on a Valkyrie. I lifted my head and watched as the last molten gold of dusk spilled across Asgard's clouds, and then the golden dome built from 100,000 shields began to awaken in the bloody twilight. The bronze gates of Valhalla soared hundreds of feet high, their door handles forged from the shattered blades of Valkyries, every groove steaming with blood mist in the twilight. The dragon bone wind chimes hanging from the lintel tremble in unison, as the roars of enormous beasts transform into battle hymns to welcome the dead. The instant anyone steps across the threshold, the vast expanse supported by 800 spear-like pillars erupts before their eyes. These beams forged from meteoric iron are scarred with blade marks, their notches embedded with the congealed souls of warriors, glowing faintly amber in the twilight. The gilded shields of the dome overlapped like the reverse scales of a dragon, flowing with the undrying blood of warriors. The souls of heroes who had fallen on mortal battlefields now reforged their forms within the runes engraved upon the shield's surfaces. In the center of the hall, a bonfire was piled with frost giant skulls, blue-white flames licking at the golden boar suspended above. As fat dripped, the sparks that burst forth ascended into constellations, casting prophetic visions of Ragnarok across the dome. Tomorrow will reveal all, this so-called trial, Ball murmured as he gazed at the dome. I won't make it difficult for you, he said with a smile. Suddenly, clear and resonant bell tones rang out across all of Asgard as several Valkyries soared through the sky. Then came a splendidly attired herald who proclaimed in a proud yet composed voice, People of Asgard, warriors, take heed. By the name of the King of Gods, the Almighty Heavenly Father, I declare to all that we shall witness a challenge from the depths of hell. Ball muttered quietly, I have nothing to do with hell. I whispered back, oh, but you do. And the name of this challenger is, Haifeng. I listened, then cursed and raised my fist, ready to smash it down on the pillar god's head. Ball blocked while clutching his own head. Hey, don't be so angry, calm down. Look here, you're just a mortal, the most Odin would do is pick some stronger than average Einherjar to duel you. I know you've got skills, worst case, pull some dirty trick to take him down. If you win, they won't complain, then we'll take the reward and leave. How about that? I stopped to carefully consider this reasoning that seemed somewhat valid. The pillar god kept his head lowered, stealing glances at me from beneath his brows, the flames in his eyes dim and lifeless. Then the herald's voice rang out once more, our hero, the war god Tyr, shall face this duel with honor. No sooner had the words been spoken than cheers surged forth. The Einherjar struck the ground with their weapons, creating an exhilarating symphony of clanging metal. This was followed by a mad scramble. None wanted to miss the spectacle of this war god's valor by failing to squeeze into the mighty Gungnir Colosseum. As the thunderous footsteps of the charging Einherjar shook the ground like an earthquake, we slowly turned to stare at each other wide-eyed, and a single thought crossed my mind, I think I'm in deep trouble. Me? Fight the god of war? Seriously? Night fell, and the halls of Valhalla were lit by flickering torches. Lying in bed, I listened to the snoring from the next room. I fished out the phone hidden under my pillow. Its screen was cracked, but it still turned on. The last photo in the album was a group picture with Shinshiue, my blurred reflection faintly visible in the glass. Moonlight streamed through the stained glass onto the floor as I quietly rose. During training, I'd noticed a gap in the western wall of Valhalla. Changing into casual clothes, I hesitated briefly before leaving the stardust sword by the bedside. While passing through the corridor, laughter drifted from the banquet hall. The Einherjar were reveling in anticipation of tomorrow's battle, none noticing the departure of a mortal. The guards by the wall were dozing. Holding my breath, I slipped through the shadows. Just as I was about to step through the gap, a clear voice rang out, leaving so soon? I froze, turning to see a red-haired girl leaning against the wall. She wore a maid's uniform, idly twirling a golden rune between her fingers. You look familiar somehow. My name is Freya. The girl took a few steps closer, moonlight illuminating her emerald green eyes. I know a secret passage. I can get you out of here. I cautiously stepped back. Then let me ask you, since we're neither kin nor close, why are you helping me? Freya's smile dimmed. My parents were sorcerers from Vanaheim. They disappeared 10 years ago while investigating the secrets of Valhalla. She clenched the rune in her hand. This is my mother's protective talisman. It can sense their presence. I need a companion, and you don't seem like those glory-drunk Einherjar. I stared at the rune in the girl's hand. Maybe this was fate? Either way, death was inevitable. Might as well scrape out a few more days of living. Taking a deep breath, I said, wait here a moment. Then I turned to retrieve the stardust sword before returning. Lead the way. Freya's eyes lit up as she grabbed my hand. Head north, turn right at the third crossing. There's a hidden passage only I know about. We ran under moonlight, climbing a long flight of stairs. At the passage's end stood an ancient wooden door carved with intricate runes. As Freya pressed her talisman against it, The symbols began glowing sequentially. Ready? She glanced back at me. The world beyond this teleportation array might be more dangerous than Valhalla itself. I looked back at the towering palace, then faced the unknown path ahead. Nodding, I said, better to gamble a worthless life than remain a puppet on strings. The wooden door slowly creaked open, the caw of a raven echoing through the morning mist. Our figures soon vanished into the fog, while the golden dome of Valhalla still shimmered in the dawnlight as if nothing had ever happened.